No, you have to do it all again. So you can do it now. Take two.
Okay, take two. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Valentine's Day Committee of the Whole. A little unusual that we'd be having it on Valentine's Day, but there's always firsts. And still new. So again, happy Valentine's Day to everybody in here and everybody who is now listening. And before we move to approval of the agenda, I'd like to pass this over to Deputy Mayor Elliott, who will read a new land acknowledgement that she's been working on and also is going to provide us some information on local aspects of African Nova Scotia heritage in this area for African Heritage Month. Deputy Mayor.
This is a result of input from Lorraine Whitman, an elder who gave a wonderful workshop a while ago, 10 days ago maybe. So this is just a trial run. 10,000 years ago, the Annapolis Valley was comprised of the Mi'kmaq districts of Sekapinaketik and Kespuduik. We thank the Mi'kmaq for sharing their ancient land, for two-eyed seeing, and their 7 sacred teachings. We also thank Niskum, the creator, for providing us with food and air and fire. And I just wanted to share, if you'll pardon me, indulge me, a little local history that connects with African Nova Scotians. We spent a certain amount of time in the last while talking about 292 Main Street, and I found some history connected to the next door address, which is 304 Main Street. And it was once the home of a family by the name of Butler. And the mother in this family, her history goes back to 1783, when the first Black loyalists arrived in Annapolis Royal. She was a States. Anyway, Glenn Hancock, who wrote a wonderful memoir about growing up in the area of Mud Creek, described them thus. 2 Black sisters lived in a little cottage near the town dump. Their name was Butler, Sabina and Tamar. They were thin, dignified, and majestically erect as they walked to the store for provisions. The youngest followed the other by 2 full strides, and one could imagine they were daughters of a Zulu king. They kept a magnificent flower garden and took in washing. They were always shown the greatest respect by everyone. These 2 sisters lived to an advanced age. The first one who died was 99 years old. Their parents had lived here before them. And one thing that I found in my research is that they were buried up at Willowbank Cemetery in plots that were paid for by the Methodists / United Church folks of the day. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you very much. Oh, they died in the early 40s.
In the early 40s or their early 40s?
The early 40s, yeah, because the oldest one was 99.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really interesting.
Awesome.
Okay. And I understand Barb Shaw is going to post that on our website. So that's great, Wendy. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right. Motion to approve the agenda, please.
Second.
Okay. It's usually the Deputy Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Because
That's
we're late,
okay.
I was rushing.
Just before we, and this is actually not in the agenda, but after we adjourn council, we're going to do, we'll call it a debrief for one of other things, but for all of council, it's not an in-camera, but we want to talk about, get a bit of an update from Councillor Ingham on the process for the CAO recruitment process. So anybody's welcome to stay. It's not in camera, but it's not part of the agenda. So just to let you know, and Councillor Ingham is going to lead us through that. So we have 4 sets of minutes. Deputy Mayor, if I could have a motion for approval of the. Sorry, you're right. Thank you, Councillor Butler. We have a mover and a seconder for the agenda. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed. Thank you again. So moving to the minutes, Deputy Mayor Committee of the Whole minutes of January 9th. Would you move that?
I would move that we send to council the minutes, the approval of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 9, 2024.
And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Butler. And are there any changes, errors, or omissions? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. And Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes, January 9th, 2024. Deputy Mayor.
I would move that we forward the approval of minutes for the in-camera meeting, January 9, 2024 to council.
A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Palmer. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And Special Committee of the Whole all-day budget minutes of January 18th, 2024.
I would move that we forward to council the approval of the minutes for the Special Committee of the Whole all-day budget meeting, January 18, 2024.
And the seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Butler. Are there any additions, errors, omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And Special Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes of January 18th, 2024.
I would move that we forward to council the Special Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes of January 18, 2024.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Madeira Voss. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. If I could just remind council, and this is more important when we get to motions that are more, I want to say consequential, but not just rote. We've had some letters from people who are listening to us on the audio, and unless we have our mics on, they can't hear us say aye, and because they're not watching. So if we could remember when we vote, just put your mics on and verbally say aye, and then that will help with the accessibility for those people who are listening on audio.
We will get bumped off if we have more than three of us.
No, that's
won't
been
we?
changed.
Okay.
We no longer, we did that a while ago so that we didn't bump people off. Yes. All right. And we have a presentation from Jody Knowles, and welcome, Jody. And I understand that Marcel Falkenham is with us online. Is that correct?
Yes.
He's coming up. Okay. And Marcel and Jody are going to speak to us about Acadia sustainability. Thank you. So whenever you are ready, and I guess whenever Marcel joins us.
Like this.
Jody, you need to put your other Jody will help.
Jody squared.
Two Jodys and two Wendy's.
Okay, I think that looks good. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us on Valentine's Day. And after not so much of a snowstorm, at least here, I made it off the mountain, so I'm happy to be here. And I see Marcel is joining us from Colchester County, where they got a little more snow.
A bit, yeah.
So I'm going to start presenting, and then I'll pass it over to Marcel about Midway. So today, we could have probably spent all day talking about sustainability initiatives on campus, but we tried to narrow it down to a few strategic priorities and programs for you, so as to not keep you all day like a budget meeting. And so we thought we would focus our conversation today around the strategic plan objectives. And our strategic plan, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, really informs our sustainability plan for campus. So we zeroed in on 4 key objectives that we'll talk about today in the strategic plan. The first one that is something that has really sort of grown on campus in the last number of years is aligning our work both in operations and in education and research around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This particular objective was very important to our former president, Dr. Peter Ricketts, and was very supportive of those initiatives being developed on campus. So that's been very much a focus for the last number of years. Not really recent, something that's been ongoing for many, many years at Acadia, really since its inception, actually. There's been a focus on teaching and research and operations around locally grown sustainable food on campus. So that's something that's continuing as a focus at Acadia. Also in the strategic plan are objectives around becoming carbon neutral. And this is work that we've been building on for a number of years. And the strategic plan really is a call to action to explore the opportunities that we can to become carbon neutral, ideally by 2030. That's not set in stone, but it's an aspirational date and it's our working target for becoming carbon neutral on campus. And we've made a lot of advances towards that in the past 5 to 10 years. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And in order to achieve carbon neutrality, of course, there's a lot of work around exploring alternative energy. We have some of that on campus and are exploring other opportunities we'll talk about. And energy efficiency, really our first line of defense in becoming carbon neutral and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll focus on those today. So starting with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this framework that was adopted by the UN member states in 2015. It's a very broad framework, as you know, with 17 goals. They're interconnected, but they do have a distinct focus within each. And within each of those 17 goals, there are multiple targets that really focus our efforts and activities in achieving the goals. And universities and colleges across Canada, as well as municipalities and countries and organizations, have really embraced these goals and are taking steps to integrate the goals into their operations plans and their strategic plans. And in our case, finding ways to integrate the SDGs in our teaching and research, as well as community service and operations. And because there are 17 goals, it's a very broad framework. It can actually be quite overwhelming for organizations to try to navigate how to meaningfully implement this work and have tangible outcomes that contribute directly to those SDG targets within each goal area. And so, you know, there's a risk of running madly off in all directions. And so we talked a lot about how to do that. The other institutions have struggled with the same challenge, and each of them are taking different approaches. And so what we decided to do is to focus on individual goals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've done a number of things in this space over the last 3 or 4 years. One of the first initiatives that was a call to action from the students actually was to sign the International Sustainable Development Goals Accord. And this is an international commitment to the SDGs by higher education institutions around the world. And it calls for a number of things, but in particular, it asks institutions to align their activities with UN SDG targets. Again, going back to those targets, the broad goal areas are important, but the really, you know, where the rubber kind of meets the road is addressing those specific targets. For example, in Zero Hunger, there are targets around malnutrition and sustainable food production. So, you know, it's very important that organizations try to zero in on action items in those particular areas, because those are the priorities set by the UN for achieving sustainable development goals. Engaging stakeholders is also important. We don't do this work in isolation. Our partners are really important, including the town of Wolfville, other institutions, other organizations. Collaborating with the other signatories in Nova Scotia, NSCC is a signatory to the SDG Accord. We were the first university in Canada to sign the SDG Accord, and NSCC was the first college in, well, they're the main college, of course. There are others in the Maritimes. And so there are a number of others across Canada that have now signed the SDG Accord, but we were the first. So it's nice to get out in front of this important work. And of course, because we're an educational institution, the Accord asks us to share our learnings with others to support their work as well as they try to do this work as well. As I said, this is an international accord, so we report to the Environmental Association for Universities and Colleges, which is based in the UK. We provide an annual progress report on our activities to this organization, as well as all the other signatories. And we also report sort of internally, and we're developing some work around that. As you can imagine, as I said, it's hard to, we do a lot of different work on campus in teaching and research and community service and engagement and student activities and partnership activities. And so trying to compile all of that work together in a meaningful way to keep people engaged and to advance this work is a bit of a challenge, but we're working on that as well. So as I said, the risk in this work is running madly off in all directions. And so we decided we would adopt a single goal each year to focus our activities, to raise awareness, to engage students in our campus community, as well as our partners. And so last year we chose life below water and oceans as our theme. This year is Zero Hunger. Next year is TBD. We haven't decided what next year will bring yet, but we have 15 goals left. So stay tuned for our choice for next year. So this has really been an effective way for us to raise awareness about a single goal and focus our efforts. One of the ways we've done this is with a president's panel. And we did this last year, featuring presenters from each of our faculties on campus. So from Pure and Applied Science, from Faculty of Professional Studies and Faculty of Arts. So we featured speaker researchers from our own faculty in each of those faculties. And this was an event hosted by the president. I think some of you have attended this event last year and also this year. And this is an opportunity to showcase Acadia research and teaching and community service in this space, and engage our campus and our community on these important topics. So these were our presenters just this past November, and it was actually a packed room. So this was a topic that was, as we know, which is why we chose it, very important to a number of people. And so it was great to see that turnout, and it was a wonderful presentation. A new initiative this year is an effort to engage students and raise awareness and get them taking actions in support of sustainable development. So we created a student passport program, and it was an interesting initiative, kind of a pilot program on a small scale for 25 students. And we developed this passport book, and students, as you might expect, had to earn stamps by participating in a number of activities and actions on campus and in the community. So for example, we had no poverty display in the library, and students were asked to go and get a book out or read some reference materials in order to earn their stamp for no poverty. You might recognize one of the other pictures on the slide. This was on our waterfront, collectively our waterfront, on your waterfront. It was a display on learning about, this was focused on SDG 14, Oceans and Life Below Water. So learning about the mudflats and coastal communities and important knowledge in that space. So students had to visit this site to learn about our coastal community and wildlife and coastal issues related to the SDGs. So there were 17 sites on campus and in the community for students to participate in. So this was a wonderful program that we held during November. It was a competition. So the students who earned the most stamps were entered into a draw for various prizes. So we hope to do that again next November. So moving on from the SDGs, some of the other work we do is, of course, around local and sustainable food. And as many of you know, the Acadia Community Farm has been a longstanding initiative on campus established by students in 2008. And since COVID, it's been very interesting. So many things have changed since COVID. And for us, one of those things is growing interest in the community garden. Partly in response to a renewed focus on local food. It's never really gone away, but we're seeing sort of a ramp up in that space. And also increased food security aligned with the cost of living and high cost of food right now. So that's something we've observed at the farm, with more interest in the community garden, more requests for community plots in the garden from students and from community members. At the same time, we're also seeing growing interest from students in learning about sustainable food systems, and that encompasses a whole lot in that space, from organic agriculture, carbon farming, integrated pest management, local food systems, who are all the key players that contribute to food systems from the farm to your plate. Food waste is an issue that students are really interested in, and all things in between. So we've really seen a growing interest from students in learning about food systems that's specific to their discipline. So really food relates to everyone. And so it's been wonderful to see over the years interest from students, not just in the disciplines you would expect, like environmental science or environmental studies or nutrition, but music and biology and political science and history. So it's wonderful to see that interest and to see it continue to grow along with the farm. At the same time, last year was a really challenging year for all farmers, as you well know, including the Farmers Educating Farm. It was extremely wet, ridiculously wet, really challenging growing season, replanting and trying to manage water on site and constantly shifting. So part of our work, of course, is growing food for the dining hall and the food bank and the food cupboard, as well as the community garden, but also, of course, education and teaching. So we shifted a lot, changed our work plan every week to focus on education and outreach programs with our partners. And the town of Wolfville, of course, is one of those partners. And we hosted day camps and Tried in Wolfville series events. And here pictured is one of our alumni groups from the 1950s and 60s. And they are a little picture of one of the day camps. So it's such a great space for community members to interact with students and alumni and youth and our researchers. One of our master's students in biology doing some work on bees, pictured in the photo as well. So despite the growing season, we still were able to learn and work together and understand the impacts of climate change in the context of food systems and agriculture, which is so important and which is really challenging for our farmers and our neighbors. So now because of this growing demand in the community garden and interest in food systems, we're exploring some options for expanding that community garden. Right now we have about 30 plots, but we have a fair amount of space down there. So we're looking at what that might look like moving forward in the next 15 years of the farm. Food services is a big part of our food system on campus. And so we have a number of sustainability goals in this work as well. We have actually a very comprehensive food plan for campus that guides our food services as well as our broader food system on campus. So it's not just exclusive to our food services contract that you might be familiar with. It impacts the entire campus and our relationships with our producer partners and others. One of the important goals in that food plan is that we hope by 2030 to achieve 50% local food, where we hover around 20% plus or minus, depending on the year and the level of production. 30% we think is a fairly easy and achievable target. Beyond 30%, maybe that last 10% will be a little more challenging as we need to increase production in our region in order, we're a large institution with a large food buy. So production, supply availability, distribution, these are all challenges that the larger institutional purchases, not just in the university sector, are sort of challenged with along with the producers. So there's some more work to be done, but it's important that we do that work together. And so we're continuing to do that to achieve that aspirational target. The Wolfville Farmers Market is an important partner for us, of course, for a number of reasons. And they are actually onboarded as a supplier to our food service provider on campus. So we buy directly from the Wolfville Farmers Market through the Wolfville Farmers Market to Go Hub. And that's delivered to campus for students in the dining hall. So that's been a new partnership just this past year. Right now, we're in the midst of planning for a major renovation for Wheelock Dining Hall. That's been a long time coming. So we're really excited about that. And there'll be some major investments throughout the front of the house and the back of the house in that renovation. And it will support a number of sustainability goals, such as promoting more plant-based diets with expanded vegetarian stations and eating local stations, supporting students with dietary restrictions. We're seeing an increase in that on campus. As well as in, broader society. So that's something that's a real focus for us, is ensuring student safety and the food that they eat. So having dedicated stations for students with dietary requirements is very important to us. Energy efficiency, of course, is an important priority in our renovation. And there'll be a number of other aspects to that renovation as we move forward over the next number of years. We're also working to become the first zero waste dining hall in Canada. We have a number of initiatives that are ongoing as part of that, and that work is continuing over the next year or two. So that'll be an exciting development for us. And also, our community partners are important to our food service provider and also to Acadia. And so we have a giving back program where we try to support those in the community addressing food security as well as on campus. So through this program, we've been able to, our food service provider is able to facilitate food buy donations to the Wolfville School breakfast program, as well as the Wolfville Food Bank. And of course, a number of initiatives on campus are part of this program as well. So the picture here is a food buy delivery to the Wolfville School breakfast program last fall. So we did that in September. And finally, in the food space, this year we have an organic campus program. It was actually started in 2021. We became the first organic campus in Canada, but have ramped up some activities this year in partnership with Organic Nova Scotia to support institutional procurement and a number of programs to particularly support organic producers in our province and in our region. Each September, we have an Organic Campus Week. That's a themed event in our dining hall as well as elsewhere on campus that promotes organic producers and products on campus. So that's primarily to engage students, raise awareness about the importance of organic agriculture in our community, and promote those products and increase our buying from those producers. One of the new events that we did as part of this program and in partnership with Organic Nova Scotia this year was an organic study tour with 15 students. You can see pictured here. And we visited local farms and local organic producers so that they could learn from the producers themselves, get them out of the classroom, visit the farms and learn about the organic agriculture, the challenges of working in that space, the intricacies of certification from as part of the federal organic regime, and working with big institutional buyers like Acadia and what that looks like for the producers and also for the purchaser. So that was a really successful event. And of course it rained as it did every day, it seemed, last year. So it was a wet day, but did not dampen the students' enthusiasm for this event or for the producers. So this is us visiting Taproot. We also visited Medford Farms and Canning, Just Us, the Wolfville Farmers Market. And so it was a really successful event. We hope to do again. And last but not least, our student food assistance programs are ongoing initiatives, but ramped up this year considerably, aligned with our focus on zero hunger. So there have been a number of initiatives happening this year across a number of different units on campus, including from students. One of the things we did in partnership with Organic Nova Scotia is to have a fresh food pop-up. So we gave away bags of organic and local vegetables, meat and vegetables to students last fall in partnership with the Wolfville Farmers Market. So we ordered this through the market and had to give away to students in need on campus, which was, you only see 4 of us here in this picture. That's because as we were setting up, we had 30 students lined up for their food bags. So we didn't get a chance to take picture with all of the students in the picture. We also have a partnership with the Wolfville Farmers Market to Go for a student food subscription program. So students are referred to us through a variety of networks on campus, and we subscribe them to like a food subscription CSA with the Wolfville Farmers Market to go, and students can go and pick up their fresh food box or food bag from the market, and to help with their food security during the academic year. We also have a grocery card program, so students that present to us through counseling services or through student services are provided, if they needed, a grocery card to buy food or whatever they need from the grocery store. We also give students guest meal passes for the dining hall. If they need a meal that day, then they can go to the dining hall and get a meal that day. Lots of other programs on campus. Our chapel and counseling services and student services organize a Soup for Body and Soul drop-in meal program on campus that a lot of students attend for conversation and for free soup. And of course, our student food cupboard, established in 2017, supports students throughout the year in a number of ways. And we have an ongoing advancement campaign to raise funds for student food security initiatives on campus. And with that, I will pass it on to Marcel.
Thanks, Jody. My slides aren't gonna be nearly as pretty as Jody's. I'm an engineer, so I didn't have any pictures. But this one actually Jody did put together. This is showing our greenhouse gas emissions from our baseline year at 0506, where we're north of 27,000 tons to down to where we're trending now in around 17,000. Obviously a bit more of a dip in the pandemic, but I think the important thing is we had a gradual trend going down through a number of efficiency measures over several years, but probably the biggest dip that we had in our emissions profile was the 2014-15 fuel switch on our central heating plant from bunker C oil or number 6 fuel oil to natural gas, which had a much better emissions profile. And then continuing measures right Nova Scotia Power has been introducing as they increase their renewable their renewable capacity as well. That being said, we still got a ways to go. So Jody, can you bring me to the next slide? So efficiency has been one of our biggest wins. That's again, our central heating plant. We have about just under 3 kilometers of distributed underground steam and condensate lines servicing most of the buildings on campus. Maintaining those and improving the leak tightness of those systems is probably one of our biggest wins and insulation. Not an easy thing to get away from with the way our building infrastructure heating systems are set up, but I think there's some great opportunities there and future fuel switching opportunities. We've looked at things from synthetic natural gas, renewable natural gas or recovered natural gas from landfills. There's some low carbon fuel oil opportunities we're exploring and even green hydrogen. So there hasn't been a lot of opportunities probably in the past decade. There's a lot more popping up now that'll fit the bill and work closely with their existing infrastructure. On the electrical side, electricity consumption overall, in spite of increasing our footprint by about 15%. We've actually managed to reduce our overall consumption by about the same, again, through a number of different technologies. We adopted LED lighting early on, but there's everything from load matching pump systems to new technologies that have come down. One that actually was a big win in the Science Complex renewal project back in 2018 was fume hood technology that researchers use they're quite energy intensive, and that was one that we were early adopters on. But it led to probably the single biggest carbon reduction on that project, with north of 1,000 tons just from using that technology that was 50% more efficient. Mechanical and HVAC systems continue to be big opportunities for us. We have north of 50 buildings on campus. We do make use of 2 geothermal wells, but we've been adding on to those systems in terms of drawing from the return water to use for cooling in the Science Complex. Just one example. Load matching pumps, but That's something that we're implementing now instead of having pumps running wide open and just throttled to get the output that you want. We actually using variable speed technologies come a long ways and has some great opportunities. And one that more recently surprised me. I mean, installation's always been a focus, but mechanical room insulation, we've been having some third-party studies. Just reviewing a handful. I think we did half a dozen there a few weeks back, and the opportunities there just with improved blanketing technology, improved insulation and repairing of pieces that have come off. We're seeing, opportunities for 6-figure annual savings. So we're pretty excited about that, and we'll be moving forward on that in the year to come. You want to roll ahead, Jody? Jody, I'm going to let you take this one because you're most familiar with the Green Choice program, if you're okay with that.
Sure. This is a provincial program that was launched in 2020 and then revised in 2021 by the provincial government. And we've been tracking this program and along with the other Nova Scotia institutions. It's a collaborative initiative that allows large customers to purchase 100% of their electricity from local renewable energy sources. So I imagine many of you are familiar with this initiative. It's been a long time in development, and we're starting to get to a place where that program is starting to ramp up. So that's exciting for us. It was developed by the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, together with Nova Scotia Power and what's called a procurement administrator, sort of a third-party organization that was hired by the partners. That's called Coho Climate Advisors, and they're sort of facilitating the development of the structure of this program. So this is an exciting initiative. In order to participate, it's really targeted to large energy purchasers like post-secondary institutions and others. And in order to participate, the parties need to have 10,000 megawatts of consumption or participate as part of an aggregate with a minimum of 1,000 megawatts. So that eliminates a lot of small entities. So it's very much targeted to large energy purchasers. So we're participating in this initiative along with other Nova Scotia universities and colleges as part of an aggregate. This week is actually the deadline for verifying all of our Nova Scotia Power account information for the campus. So they need to verify as part of the program our energy consumption as part of the subscription to the program. And then in a couple of weeks, there is a deadline for our memorandum of agreement with the other institutions. And then over the next 6 months, it goes to the minister for approval of our application, and with production estimated online 27, 28. So still a long way to go in this initiative that was launched in 2020. We don't like to wait. There's a sense of urgency around climate change, of course, but it does take a long time to work through these kinds of programs and for production to be built and come online. So it's still an exciting program, even though it's a long time coming, and we're really excited about the opportunities. This will dramatically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions for the campus to participate in this program and subscribe 100% of our load. So that's a game changer in the same way that converting to natural gas was, but even more so. Okay, Marcel, I think you're back up.
Yeah, sorry, this one might not be in the right sequence, but it's one that we're pretty proud of on campus. We peaked in our water consumption in 2003-04 at around 51,000 kilogallons. And our current consumption, we're down to 20.5 kilogallons annually. So that's been a huge improvement, incremental over time. No one single project that we can point out, but improving the tightness of our steam distribution system and reducing. We have a number of water cooled condensers that had across campus that we've been converting out to air cooled. We still have a few opportunities to review. Our ice plant needs a new condenser that for capacity, but as well that would optimize or dramatically reduce the water consumption associated with it. Again, our distributed heating system, the steam and condensate lines, a lot of 1960s and earlier technology there. So maintaining that, the leak tightness of that system is huge. And then of course, our aquatic system, our pool is a heavy consumer of water. So we're looking at some programs to minimize that, the consumption on that. Flip it there, Jody. Thank you. Transportation parking, we currently have about 1,150 parking spaces on campus available for students and staff. We also have a couple of parking lots that are currently leased to the town and used by the public. Subway parking lot, or a parking lot adjacent to the subway, and the parking lot adjacent to the farmers market. We've been talking with and working with the town on active transportation through parts of our campus, and I know Devin has a plan that's been put forward on that will involve some routes down past the farmers market across Acadia properties, but it's something that we certainly encourage and are supportive of. And we've been approached and are exploring actively some electric transportation options on campus. E-scooters, e-bikes have been brought forward, and obviously there's procedures that we have, protocols that we have to have around that, but something that we are actively exploring, and there seems to be a lot of opportunities and interest there. EV charging station, we put in level 3 back in 2020 in collaboration with the town. And as Jody summarized here, with obviously the utilization's been going up quite significantly as electric vehicles have become much more prominent. Right now we're targeting more where we need to be looking at some level 2 chargers. We haven't had a significant amount of students showing up yet with electric vehicles, but we can see that coming down the pipe. So we're currently exploring some opportunities for adding some low level 2 chargers at different areas on campus. Yeah, I don't know, Jody, if there's anything else you want to add on that.
I would just add that there are still only about 20 or so fast chargers in the entire province. So we have one of them, which is great. It was partnering with the town really enabled this project. It wouldn't have been possible without working with the town. So it's great to be able to provide that service to our campus and community here. There have been a few challenges with service reliability of the fast charging network. It seems to be more exclusive to the level 3 stations throughout the province. We sort of get captured in that. So we're working with Flow, the service provider, to address some of those issues. But the province right now is working on an EV strategy. I participated in a workshop last week, I think it was. They're taking steps to create a strategy to support EV charging across the entire province to address those underutilized areas. We're not too bad here in this region, but other areas, there's a real sort of EV charging desert that needs to be addressed, and more fast chargers are really important as part of that strategy. So the province is taking some steps to address that. You want me to take this one? I can take this one.
Oh, sorry, Jody. As soon as I see
I'll just keep
SDGs, I just
going.
assume it was you.
Okay, I'm just good. Okay, so that's a really small sampling of some of the initiatives that we have happening on campus in those 4 objective areas. Moving forward, we'll continue to work on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and further integration in teaching, research, operations, and community service in a variety of ways. Part of that is bringing this work into the classroom. So a lot of the work that I do in my office is around service learning with students. So they help organize activities, create reports, and do a variety of initiatives that have operational outcomes, but as well as learning outcomes in the classroom. So that's a really important part of my work, and in relation to the UN SDGs. Sustainable food, of course, will continue to be an important part of our work on campus, not only around increasing local and organic food procurement, but also solutions for campus and community food insecurity that continues to grow, as we all know. Energy and carbon neutral campus are really tied together. So as Marcel was saying, we're always exploring opportunities for additional energy efficiencies, but also renewables in line with provincial and federal programs and funding programs, which are really critical because, as you well know, some of these kinds of initiatives require significant capital investment and are long-term, they're really long-term initiatives to achieve this work. And for Carbon Neutral Campus, a lot of work we've done has been somewhat ad hoc, thoughtful, but sort of isolated to specific areas and sort of mechanical and insulation. And to get to Carbon Neutral Campus, we really need a more integrated planning approach to maximize emissions reductions and determine what investments really are going to offer the best return, not only financially, but also in terms of emission reductions. Sustainability really is about balancing environmental objectives with financial realities and those social and community benefits that we all would like to achieve together. With that, we'll thank you again for allowing us to share with you some of what we've been working on for the last couple of years. You think you know where to find us, but if you want to reach out directly, please feel free to do so anytime, and we'd be happy to come back another time.
Thank you, Jody and Marcel. And if you could just indulge us for a few minutes, I wonder if members of council have any questions for you.
I didn't.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I guess this is probably a question for Marcel. I was at a meeting recently at the Wu Center. So it's around potable water. I was pouring a glass and then I looked around the kitchen and I realized that there was a sign that said, "Don't drink the water." And there wasn't another option. I'm just wondering, I know like 10 years ago, that was a problem. I think it was lead related. Is it still? It must be.
It's actually a problem with the brass. Lead-free and the pH variability of the town water supply we end up with. So I think it was January 2013, might have been January 2014, brass fittings were considered lead-free, even though they contain, I think it was up to 8% lead, which would be stable normally, but we have a lot of problems with faucets that aren't used regularly. So easy to fix with a flushing program, which is what we implemented throughout our residences, a minimum, like it's part of our custodial routines. We do a full flushing program. So we know that the water is turned over every 24 hours. And it tests, it's literally leaching out of the brass fittings that are in the plumbing system. So we had complete plastic pipe buildings, but you'd have brass fittings for connections that would show up when it was stagnant. Again, it's a pH related issue with the brass. As soon as you do a flushing on it, we went through a pretty intensive study on that. It comes back well under the acceptable limits. Problem is we can't implement that flushing program at every single faucet on campus. So there's a couple that are labeled as not for potable use unless they're able to implement a logging program that it's been flushed every day. And then we have designated spots where lead water filters have been installed on water fountains for pretty near every building on campus, but we do have a couple of gaps on that are still relying on flushing protocols.
Thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. A very interesting presentation. Did I understand you hope to be carbon neutral by 2030? Is that what you're carbon neutral?
That's an aspirational target. We don't have a firm commitment on that.
Yeah,
That's 6 years away.
yeah, that's only 6 years away. So, what do you foresee that you're going to have to do that if you could do it? Like what? I mean, I know you have your underground. You're producing energy from the underground. What else do you anticipate?
No, it's really two components. I mean, Jody talked about the Green Choice program. That's, I believe, over 50% of our carbon footprint is from our electrical supply from Nova Scotia Power. So switching that to a carbon neutral renewable resource would address that component. And as I mentioned on the central heating plant side, we're looking at potential fuel switching opportunities. So if we went with a 50% recovered natural gas, recovered methane from landfills, that actually is a carbon neutral fuel source because it's a recovery and offset. So opportunities like that are other low carbon fuel oils. But if we hit those two, we're pretty much there.
Councillor Madeira Voss.
I'll just maybe quickly add that we've already reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by over 30%. So prior to this strategic plan target, our working target was really the Paris Agreement, so we've exceeded that. And as Marcel said, you know, really the two big loads are heating and electricity. So the Green Choice Program is a game changer. That takes us probably to about 70% reduction, 60–70% reduction, and then looking at fuel options for that is really the big three.
Okay, thank you, Madonna. Thank you, Jody and Marcel. That was a very impressive presentation. It's great to see that work continues at a great pace. I have just two questions. One has to do with the student food security, and you mentioned quite a few initiatives that you have to help address that. Do you have a sense of numbers? How many of your students? I mean, I'm sure that fluctuates from term to term, and it's sort of a general range or a percentage.
We don't really have general numbers. In this work, it's actually any of the Acadia researchers who work in this space, like Dr. Leslie Frank would tell you, it's challenging to actually get reliable data because there is a respect for privacy. Students who are food insecure, as well as anyone who's food insecure, can be sort of resistant to participating in systems and actually reporting that they're food insecure. So what we know is that we have some data points, but what we know is more anecdotal, and the reasons for food insecurity are very different for different students. So, and they present through a number of different units and venues on campus. Some will identify themselves to their professors or to other students, or even to me or their counselor. Some we might find out through the Wolfville Food Bank. We do have some students that visit the Wolfville Food Bank. We try to address those issues on campus, but we know that some of the off-campus students find the local food bank, and they reach out to us, and so we have a good working relationship there. And so when they identify those students with permission to us, we try to provide those supports on campus. So we don't have aggregate numbers for it, but we know anecdotally that it's certainly been growing over the last number of years. Food security for students has always been an issue. I remember that well. Lots of craft dinner. Yeah. And but it's certainly, not to be facetious, but it's certainly a growing issue with the cost of housing that's different from what it was in my day, and for many of you, I'm sure, as well as the cost of food. So that's certainly been more of an acute issue. And we know that food security is sort of a co-issue with lots of other issues, including mental health and student performance in the classroom. So that's something that we're very focused on campus and providing those supports on campus.
Great. If I could have a second question, I confess I was surprised that you have 1,150 parking spaces on campus. I'm sure those are used by both students and employees, people who work there. Have you seen, or are you able at all to track whether there's been an increase in the number of students using cars or bringing their? I mean, I feel anecdotally when I look at my own street over the last 30 odd years, I see an increased number of students who seem to need or want to bring their vehicles. I just wonder whether there's been an increase, whether that's tracked at all. And the correlation between those needing or wanting to bring their vehicles and then all these other efforts that you've got going on with, e-scooters or active transportation and the use of cars.
I don't have anything officially on that front. I'd say anecdotally that we have seen an increase in students bringing vehicles to campus. That being said, most of our parking, I think it's about 420 spaces, is at the athletic complex. So that is a mix of student, staff, and the public. It's pretty rare that that one is full, but obviously it's on the perimeter of campus and it's not as convenient for many as some of our upper parking lots. As of right now, we haven't had, we did a slight expansion on one of our parking lots last year at Eaton and Christopher, but we don't have any major parking expansions on the horizon currently planned. And as for how it fits with e-scooters and e-bikes, we wouldn't be seeing them necessarily in parking lots. I think that would be new stations created off our off the side of our drives and parking lots that would be there.
I just had one thing, something I've been working on for the last probably 10 years is actually a car share program. There are organizations and businesses that do this work across Canada, and our hope is to partner with one of those companies to provide a car share program to our students. And there are opportunities for that to be a partnership with the town of Wolfville as well. It's been a challenge getting this program going because we're a very small market. And so as you would expect, some of those companies haven't been interested in working in the Maritimes or Atlantic Canada. They tend to be concentrated in the larger urban centers, Toronto, and BC, and Quebec. But it's still on my to-do list. I've had conversations with the other institutions that would also like to have a car share program. I think that's something that's would be a really important service for students as well as the community. And so I'll continue to work on that file and hope before I retire that we'll actually have a car share program. It's been a long time.
Thank you. Councillor Ingham.
Yeah, I think we actually sat next to each other at lunch, and then we did mention that, and that was maybe a year ago or so. Yeah, it is difficult in the rural areas, but I think it is ironic that we're talking about increasing the parking lot size when we're talking about how to improve our active transportation. I think the town and Acadia is both doing that. Thank you both. It was really good to hear all the impressive stats, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and the water consumption. So thank you both for that. I just had my only question is to deal with the zero waste at the meal hall. I think you said that was like a 2-year plan. Is that like is there a model that you're following? And would you be one of the first universities that's doing that? Because when I hear zero, I'm always like skeptical on that.
So it's actually a national initiative through an organization called Zero Waste Canada. And so we would be the first zero waste dining hall as part of that program. And there are a number of different initiatives that would fall under that work. And really it's about zero waste to landfill. And we already have a number of programs in place in our dining hall, in particular at the back of the house and also the front of the house, to reduce waste in our dining hall operation. We generate a lot of waste in food services. Any food services organization generates a fair amount of waste, but we've been really successful in the initiatives that we've implemented so far. As you might expect, a lot in the back of the house, as any restaurant would have to reduce food waste in prep, but we also have post-consumer waste programs at the front of the house. So one of those was actually one of my first initiatives when I started in 2008, 2009, I think it was. We eliminated trays from the dining hall, and that significantly reduces food waste as well as energy and water consumption. So that was a very successful program that a number of institutions have also implemented. So there are a number of different initiatives that would be part of that strategy, and it would be different for each institution. There'd be some similarities, but so we're sort of navigating what that would look like for our dining hall to get to that point of kind of zero waste to landfill. To some extent, it's aspirational because, you know, on the manufacturing side, there are some wastes that are difficult for us to deal with on campus and also with our waste partners. But we're taking steps towards that. We think that's important.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you. Yeah, impressive data for sure. Lots of work obviously been done and continue to be done. So thank you for that. My question on the community garden. So you said there's 30 plots. Are they all used by Acadia or community? What's the breakdown and how big can that grow? You said there's space, but how big?
So it varies every year. So we have some return gardeners, a few long-standing gardeners that have been there since the beginning, since 2008. So sometimes we have more community, sometimes we have more students, but I think last year and the year before it was half and half, I think. And that was an uptick in the interest from students. There, as you know, there haven't traditionally been a lot of students here in the community throughout the summer, but we're seeing more students here. And I think, as I mentioned, you know, sort of the interest in local food as well as food insecurity is the reason for that sort of growing interest among students. So we've got about a half-acre garden down there, and the plots are actually quite large. They're about 12 by 20, so it's a pretty sizable garden. We have actually a lot of new gardeners, particularly students, but some of the community members are people who have retired, moved into apartments, they still want to garden. So it's great to welcome them into that space, or people that are new to Wolfville that are interested in meeting other people who are interested in gardening. So we have a fair amount of space to work with. We've got programming space that we designate for events and activities. But some people actually request a half a plot. So we could, if we had smaller plots, we could, you know, double the number of community plots that we have. Some people even request a quarter of a plot. Some people request 2 plots. The really avid gardeners do that. Last year, some of those that did were really sorry about it because it was a lot to take care of with all that rain. So the community garden, for those that have been to the farm, is in the back portion of the farm, and the front of the farm, which is about the same amount of space, is the university garden. So that's a lot of space for us to grow in, and we could actually expand some of the community garden portion along with that demand into the university plot and still have a lot of production space. So lots of opportunities to grow that.
Questions? I have a question. Marcel, I'll direct it to you, and it has to do, you made a comment about the rink and some new equipment, condenser. I don't suggest I really know what a condenser is, but thinking about the rink and the pool and understanding the pool has a lot of issues right now. Has there been any discussion about those 2 facilities and the opportunity if they were upgraded to, I'm assuming now you don't use the, you're not using a heat exchange from the rink into the pool, but maybe you are. That technology is around for new facilities. Is that anything on your radar?
Yeah, we've been using that since 2008. That's actually the pool is probably our biggest heat sink for the heat recovery from the condenser, and it's actually a problem that we end up overheating the pool because we're rejecting so much heat from the ice plant condenser. So we've been doing that since 2008 with the Johnson Controls Initiative, as well as rejecting heat to a few air handlers to supply that is HVAC units supplying heat into the building. But obviously when we're running the ice plant in the summer, we don't, the offices don't like us pumping heat into the building. So the pool becomes kind of our biggest heat sink. And then we have the supplemental condenser on the roof of the ice plant, which is currently a water cooled cooling tower condenser. The plan is to replace that with an adiabatic condenser. We can get into the technology, but let's just sum it up. It's a lot more water and energy efficient.
Okay. So, and I am a big supporter of keeping the pool at Acadia, but would it be reasonable to say that without that pool, would you still have places for that heat to go from the rink?
Currently, because we have a capacity restriction or limit on the existing cooling tower, but the new adiabatic condenser would have sufficient capacity to provide the heat capacity that we need.
Thank you.
Regardless of pool.
All right. Other questions? Thank you. Thank you so much. Very informative. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are, of course, welcome to stay or welcome to go. I'm sure you have busy days. That brings us to public input. I understand we don't have anyone online, but would you like to speak? Yes, if you have done this before, just give us your name and where you live, and you have 4 minutes. I wonder if staff could help. I think it's the levers on your right. There you go.
I'd like to make some comments on the sign on the.
Your name and
Oh,
your
sorry.
address, please.
My name's Greg Campbell. I'd like to make some comments on the Wolf Hill sign on the at the waterfront. So I've got some copies.
We can pass those around because you have a time limit.
Only one page, so, but I will read it. These comments are kind of pointed, but I hope they'll be considered as questions or as questions than criticisms, but I would like to comment on the very recent installation of the wrought iron sign in the Wolf Hill Waterfront Park that generated a fair amount of controversy and discussion on Facebook recently. While I do not find the aesthetics of the sign personally displeasing, at least as a standalone and beyond the context of its location, I am more interested in the principle of the fact that it was installed before some consultation with the greater Wolf Hill community. I'm curious to know how council members might explain how such neglect to ask for feedback from the public might be minimized or justified. I would also like to know how a project initiated by the Wolf Hill Business Development Council can garner such influence and prominence, perhaps at the neglect of other more needy priorities of our local community. I'm sorry for the typos. I.e. skyrocketing property taxes, homelessness, road repair, etc. I am curious also to know if any safety studies were considered in terms of young people who might climb up the sign at the risk of injuring themselves, especially as the location is over the precarious rock breakwater. Well, I do appreciate that visually aesthetic projects can add to the morale of residents and visitors and will require funds to be allotted to a budget for such. My concern is the general public have been neglected and left out of the decision-making process for a project that would require considerable expense and furthermore could be anticipated to generate some discussion and even reasonable objection before execution. To help illustrate my point, what if some young people decided that some tasteful graffiti applied to the same rocks would greatly improve the looks of the park and be a welcoming gesture to those who appreciate that kind of art? There's a great documentary that I would suggest council members seek and watch titled Bomb It, featuring street artists and some famous figures like Banksy that discuss the hypocrisy that commercial and corporate art play in communities in the form of advertising and billboards. To me, the new Wolf Hill sign is symbolic or emblematic of how privilege presumes to possess superior and unassailable values that, of course, the general public should always value and support. This leads me to ask, how many other decisions does council rubber stamp without public approval and input?
Thank you, Greg.
There anyone else for public input? Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. That moves us to, my light on, yes, committee reports. Councillor Butler, do you want to add anything to your audit report?
No, as submitted, it was a
Right.
very good meeting.
Was a good meeting and good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Madeira Voss, planning, anything else you wish to
Nope.
add?
Thank you, as submitted.
Thank you. I have nothing else to add to Town and Gown Committee. A note on the end of that, it will revert to President Hennessy will chair the next meeting, and for from April till next April, Acadia will be the chair of that meeting. Are there any questions of, I'm sorry, back to planning. Are there any questions of the chair of Planning Committee on her report? And any questions related to Town and Gown? Hearing none, I will pass it over to our acting CAO for your report.
Thank you, Worship. She's been wanting the weather today, so I apologize.
Understand.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. I'm just a little under the weather today, so I'm just orientating myself here for this, but I have a submitted report and certainly can answer any questions that council may have relative to the submission.
Just, does anybody have any questions? I do have one, and I'm just moving down in my agenda to find it. Wait,
Oh, yes.
that's no problem. Thought I had written it down on here. Would bring note as I'm looking for my comments to Heritage Day, and Nick is not here. That is, we are doing an event at the Oven from 2 to 4. So, and I think I saw the arena. This is on Monday. On Monday, Heritage Day, Town Hall is closed. There is a community event, and there's also a community skate, I think, at I guess I did not have a question on that, but CAO report, oh, I wrote it down. Actually, it's maybe a question I can direct to Barb Shaw. Any sense of the timing that we might see the community safety officer report? And I'm specifically interested in how it might connect in timing to our budget discussions in case there's an implication.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. In response to that, we have been working through the management team, and I continue to work with Dr. Schneider to get the presentation and his final report to a point at which it will really land well with council, meaning really fulfilling all of the requirements in the contract. We want to make sure that the report that he's delivering is going to work for our community. And right now it's still remaining at a very high level. So we are not anticipating that it will land in time for budget, but at the same time, we are not anticipating that we will be requesting any additional funds to support that. Acadia also has requested time. They need to unpack this. We both need to review and socialize the report and really determine how we might bring this to life. So we will touch on it during our budget process, but at this point in time, it does not appear that we will be requesting any additional funds.
Interesting. All right, Councillor Ingham.
Oh, yeah, I just had one question. I know that our new Director of Finance, Beth Hopkins, has started. We have not met her yet. Wondering if she is we will be meeting her as council at the next budget meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she did start last week, but then she's off this week. She's moving.
Okay.
I was told, and so she will
I'm
be.
just looking forward to meeting.
Yes,
her.
she will be.
That's
She
all.
will be.
As
she
I'm
was-
sure the rest of council is
She was
too.
here last week, and she will be here beginning full-time next week. And in the meantime, I think Jenny has been holding down the fort. Thank you, Jenny. Other questions? Councillor McKay?
Just a couple, and maybe they're meant for budget discussions, I'm not sure, but the VIC, we put the tender out, and I just see Alex left, so maybe I should wait till he comes back, but we talked about adding showers to that space, and we put a motion through and that's tendered, so how do we add that on to showers? I see a thumbs up, but I'm not really sure what thumbs up means.
Is this on? We're working with the design team. It looks like that's going to be fine, but we'll bring an update on that once we have things finalized. We're just in some meetings with a bunch of details on the final design of that. But we have looked at, and I think it's going to be very possible to add a shower. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
The West End Park, I've been getting a few questions on it and how to get engaged on what that actually looks like. I know we did some engagement earlier, and since it's on the initial phase 1, I did send an email to Director Lake last night with some people looking to get involved with that. Is that something they can do, or is it, I guess, where does it sit, and is there involvement from the community?
We'll bring more information back with the budget process, but we've been referring to that sort of consultation wish list that we've received. And so we've been moving like with that in mind and with council's comments in mind. I think the biggest thing is, as that area is really under construction. I think we're going to see a lot more construction over the next few years. And just with some of the budget constraints, we're really doing what I'm calling like the baseline investment to really get that into a usable space. And then I think in future budgets, we'll probably make a more substantial investment there. But I did respond, and I, just so everyone knows, I suggested that those folks actually, if they have ideas, they should send them to us.
Okay.
And we're happy to chat with people for sure on what their ideas are, but there's so many great ones in what we already went out and asked. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to manage the expectations if it's like, I did say it was initial investment so that, you know, it's not going to be a full blown park in year one. So just wanted to make sure that was okay. We had a comment, I guess it was from Miss Whitby at the last meeting, I can't remember now, regarding the accessibility and the way we view that's in what we're calling the Colville Art, I guess, and how that looks. Alex, can you tell us what that pathway looks like and what it would look like? Because as she said, you have to go up and look at it and then come back, or read the plaque on the building and then come back and look at the art. So I was curious what that actually did look like. After I got home, I couldn't remember if we saw an actual layout of what that was to look like, and if you could explain it, that would be awesome.
There have been a couple of sketches done. I think one, we had a conceptual sketch done by one of Devon's consultants. And I've done a little bit of conceptual layouts myself. And I do agree with the fact that it has to be set back a certain distance from the wall. I'm currently working on the layout for bringing the sidewalks back and connecting with the existing sidewalks there to maximize the ability to circulate around that park without pouring more sidewalks than we need. But they will be set back from the wall a certain distance, and it's likely the ones that have text that you need to be closer to read will have their own sort of separate sidewalk getting closer to the wall. So it's all conceptual right now. Nothing's confirmed yet, but that will be coming for springtime tenders for the concrete work.
Thank you. Other questions of the CAO or other staff? All right, thank you for that. I think the rest of the reports, Laura is going to take the mic, and Laura, I take the mic, my seat. Laura, I have a question just before you start, because the first one has all the amendments, but they relate to the subsequent reports. So I wasn't sure if you're going to go report by report or. So for example, I noticed one of the motions is, I have to keep moving back up, related to the virtual meeting policy, but the virtual meeting policy actually comes second to the introductory report.
So what are you reading the motion from? Is it the list or is it?
It's
the report?
actually a list. It says draft motions, and that's in the committees of council policy amendment summary, and then it says draft motions, but any discussion would come in subsequent reports. So I just wasn't sure how you were going to do that. So I
Yeah,
was a
okay.
little
I'm
confused.
not sure what I've done there, but let's
Okay.
follow what's on the screen and we'll see how we go.
Can I give it clarity?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because I think that first one is the overall governing one, so it
Yeah.
takes everything in,
Yes.
so it doesn't. It's impossible to do.
It was a challenge to try
Yeah,
and
go back one.
separate
So we
them
need to
out.
maybe discuss the subsequent ones before we come back to this one, if we're going to deal with that motion.
Oh, okay. So all right. I'm still a little confused
So
because I'm looking
if
at.
we
this-
went to that first one, draft motion that council approves amendments
Can I s-
as per attached committee council policy, but we haven't actually discussed the council policy at that.
Yeah, okay. So should I just see this for a
Yeah.
second?
Yep.
What if we did both of them at this?
Yeah,
Discussed both
let's
of
have
them,
the discussion
maybe?
and see how it comes
Yeah,
out, because
that's good.
Yeah.
Just before we get to the motion.
yeah, okay, all right, yeah,
That's what
let's
I'm
do
asking.
that. Okay, so, this was a bit confusing because we kind of looked at them all at the same time, and it sort of stems back. If you go back to 2022, we did a sort of review of a lot of these policies, which was born out of the desire for council to get some clarification around expectations for members. We were just coming out of COVID, we were, you know, starting to meet in person again. So at that time, the Committees of Council policy was amended. We introduced an attendance policy. The Code of Conduct policy for municipal elected officials was amended or reviewed, and we introduced the virtual meeting policy as well. So having worked with those policies for a year now, the task force in their review wanted to recommend some of these changes, and part of that came from a further revision of the Code of Conduct for elected municipal officials, which was done by the province. And so that was more robust, and to keep us in line with that, we reviewed our policy and amended that, which was done in November last year. So upon that review, and then reviewing the Council of Committees policy and the attendance policy, some of the amendments, and the virtual meeting policy, some of the amendments tie into all of them. So all that being said, the amendments to the Committees of Council policy would negate the need for a separate attendance policy. The amendments to the virtual meeting policy, which we can talk about in a little bit, do affect the Committees of Council policy, but the virtual meeting policy has its own separate one. It's just that some of the discussion helps inform the Committees of Council policy with regard to virtual meeting being allowed. Is everyone else confused?
No, I just want to, because they come chronological, I want to be able to discuss those
Yeah.
sub-policies before we.
And
discuss motion.
maybe if it's better to discuss, once we get into the discussion, we might pull out more, and then we can take it from there.
Okay.
So, and then the other piece, just to add on to this, is that it's kind of separate, but kind of the same. There was, the task force would like to introduce a code of conduct for citizen members as well. So that's the other draft motion that's there. So I'll leave it there, and if you want to discuss the first piece, then we can see where it comes from.
You've done your presentation.
For that one. Okay, okay, then I can carry on. All right, so the Committees of Council policy, the changes that are being recommended, let me just scroll down, this might make it a bit easier. When we looked at that policy, along with the revisions that were made to the Code of Conduct policy for elected municipal officials, as well as what's already in the legislation for the MGA around attendance, and what we had in the separate attendance policy, which you're now being asked to repeal if that's your decision. The information, there was some duplication between the committees policy, Committees of Council policy, and the attendance policy. So I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit. So this section here, I don't know if you can read that, that's on the screen. This was taken, this was all in the attendance policy. So we took that out of the attendance policy, put it in here. If we go down further to the virtual meeting policy, which, bear with me. Let's click a few pages down. The virtual meeting policy, the changes that we wanted to make there, that the task force are recommending, is removing the barrier of the limit of 3 meetings in the year, which could help with the attendance as well. Let's just see what else was in there. And there is a section in the Committees of Council policy which basically says if you're attending virtually, it's as if you're attending in person.
So how do you suggest we discuss that there are some specific things? How do we discuss that?
I would say if you want, I mean, I'm not sure what what the task force feels. But if you want to see what it is you want to discuss, then we'll be able to maybe better translate it around some of this stuff.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Jen.
Okay, so maybe because this one and this one is overarching, and so every time we made, I think we found every time we went through and discussed something, we had to come back to this overarching and make sure they were consistent so
Yes.
that there were no
Understand.
loopholes for, I'll call them, I don't know, contradictions. Then, so maybe, I think we did it at the task force, I was trying to think how we went about it, but I think we did attendance policy. So maybe we can discuss it and then virtual, and then come back and say if we agree or not, then each one would inform the top one.
Yes.
Does that
That's
make
exactly
sense?
what I was asking,
Okay,
if we could.
because I think that's how we did
Thanks,
it. at the
Jody.
task
Thank
force,
you.
I think.
What I was asking if we could
Okay,
do
I think
that.
that's how we did it then. I think that made sense for us. A way up, okay. Does that make that okay with you? Is that
Yeah,
make sense how we
sure,
did it?
whatever, yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to relive the memory or the meeting.
Yeah, I think we were trying to streamline a little bit better. And that's where we came from, but that's a good start.
Great. Attendance, I'm just scrolling down to find that. I have questions, but do others have questions? Counselor Commodore.
Okay, I think this came up at a meeting a virtual meeting that I attended. So if I'm on the phone line, like not
That's
using.
virtual, that's not attendance.
But it's virtual, like, does it count if I'm on the phone line to being in the meeting? That was the question that we had, like, if I'm using Teams and my camera isn't working, am I attending the meeting?
No.
But I have audio, so let's be clear on that, like, you're not there,
The
so you
code
may
of-
as well hang up. That's what, you can listen, yeah.
Can't vote.
So but yeah, so phoning in is not attending.
That's, yeah, and virtual, when we talk about virtual, it's video technology, it's not telephone call, so.
I have a question about council member attendance, and I remember Councillor McKay, you brought the new policy, that now old policy, to our attention, and I remember at the time wondering why we needed it, but I am now convinced, and I think of a situation back at the end of the last council, and a couple of you were at that council, where the MGA said, and I think it still says that the only requirement for a council member is not to miss more than 3 council meetings in a row. It doesn't really say whether committee of the whole is a council meeting or accessibility is a council meeting. It's just 3. And we did have a councillor who managed to not miss 3 in a row, but was away for many others. I remember some residents in the community contacting me, trying to get that information, and the only way we could find that information was they had to go through, and it was actually easier with the old website because we could get back quite a few years in terms of minutes. They had to actually go through all physical minutes to get the information they needed. So one of the benefits to the current approach that we have, that was brought by Councillor McKay, is that for residents in the community who wanted to get that information, it's fairly easy because it's in one place, much like our expense form. So I'm just wondering why, given that we always had the opportunity to go back and look at minutes, not necessarily we, but the members of the public, that we are going back to that, when I thought that one of the rationales to the current, and it's not so much the attendance policy, but it's the monitoring of the attendance policy, which seemed to work well, why the task force thought to get rid of that. Why was it too much work, or?
I think my reasoning for supporting getting rid of that is the amount of staff time that involves. I think that we are all accountable for attending ours, and we have a process in place through the minutes. So there is accountability there for anyone who's interested in knowing what our participation level is in certain meetings. And it does require an awful lot of staff time to pull all of that together. And what we're doing is just recreating a different format for information that's already available and public.
Public, but very hard to get access to. And that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I personally don't think it does. I'm just trying to balance that against the amount of staff time that's required to pull all those stats together.
And can I ask how much staff time that actually takes relative to how much it might take for the community, given that for non-council meetings, we are filling it in our so meetings that are outside of this, but the formal council meetings, we're filling it in ourselves.
Yeah. I can't give you like an exact number. It does take a bit of time because I have to go back and track through who was here. The good thing, this council, it's not an issue. Like we haven't had attendance issues with this council. So it's, you know, it would take less time if one person called and said, I want to know the attendance for Mayor Donovan for the last year, then that's easier to do than it is pulling all that information together.
So a resident could do that.
Absolutely. And anecdotally, we've not had any, like no one's
No.
ever questioned.
Usually comes up during the
attendance, so-
election.
Yeah, well.
At least it did last time.
Yeah,
Councillor McKay?
I would say that I think it was because of the last election that this came up because that question, those questions were, or did come up more than once on probably more than one person, maybe all of us. I don't really know, but probably no one asked me what my attendance was, but maybe they asked someone else. So when we discussed it, it was about being accountable and really it was more, I think we had the discussion of if there is an issue, should we be debriefing it and having a discussion amongst ourselves to say, you know what, we're all here to make good decisions for our community or to our best. If I'll just look at Jen because she's across from me, but if Jen isn't coming to the meetings, maybe we should be having a discussion. Say, Jen, you're not here. Is there something we can we help you? Is there is there an issue? Do we need to do something differently? And if not, then it's hindering the decision-making for the rest of us. So, especially if you miss one and then come in and then have to be debriefed because you missed the last one, because I think that was last council's
Yes,
issue
it
too.
was.
We ended up spending some time reiterating the same discussions over and over again because people weren't there, which just is a drain on the rest of us. So at the end of the day, if staff is okay with getting phone calls or asking us what the attendance was, but I think we need to be better as a group to say, let's just be better and talk to each other.
I just want to add to that, and just in part of all our inclusivity and all of these policies, it's that, as you talked about that, for each one of us to hold each other accountable and let them know how it affects. And then also if there's some issue that somebody's having, maybe they're sick, how can we help? So it sort of brings council in together for more of a discussion, not in a way that's non-threatening. I think that's what
Yeah, I think because the MGA is so loose or so limited on its expectations, it did allow advantage to be taken of that. That was frankly to the detriment of the rest of council. And as a council, we don't have, should you want to take 2 council meetings off and then come back for the 3rd one, for whatever reasons, there's no recourse. You can do that because the MGA says you can. Oh, yes, you could still do it, but at least
Regardless of this
Yes.
attendance policy.
right. But then what happens is the public has information about their members of council and that they find, and we are employees of the public.
But they have that information regardless. I guess what we're
I
doing.
understand that, but it's not easy, and particularly with our current website, finding minutes is not as easy as it used to be. And maybe that's a website issue.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't have an issue with it, but I use it a lot. So that's probably why. But yeah, as I said, if anyone wants to
Well, for
come
example,
ask-
I noticed I was looking for some minutes and there were no minutes of meetings on the website from about May. In one of the recent years I was looking at, I was going to bring that to your attention. They're just not on the website, so.
Okay, yeah, so let me know what day
That makes
what
that
year that is,
difficult
then
to
I can
check,
look
okay.
into that.
All right, that was my question about that one. Other questions about attendance? Is that how we're going to go?
I think we did take part of the attendance policy though and pump it up into that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can show that, Laura, because
Yeah.
I recall we took a big chunk of what was like.
It
we-
was the expectation.
Even though there wasn't an online tally of it, but there was a section that we put up there that said, you're still expected to come to meetings. There still is an expectation that you'll go to
Yeah.
strategic planning, all of those other things that are really important to
It's
to the
this
group.
section here.
Yeah, thank you. So that came, I think, pretty much directly out of the attendance
Yeah,
policy and
that's
put in
correct.
there.
Yeah.
So that there is still a level of, so when you sign on, you know that this is still really an expectation of what the job is. Right? Did I get that right?
I- So we're just going through questions on this overarching policy. Well, let's talk about the virtual. And I must say, I can't see that, and I'm going through this committee of policy to find my comments. I did have a question and comments on virtual.
Okay, so couple of things with the virtual. The first one is, I guess, maybe the easier one is that we want to repeal the telephone and electronic polls policy because now we have these platforms available to us. We no longer use the telephone to poll or email. So that's, I think, fairly straightforward. The other thing with the virtual, I'm just going to pull up here. Yeah, so the task force discussed removing the barrier of only being able to meet 3 times in a year virtually. And really, in the lens of inclusivity, we were looking at it from, you know, what if someone's working in Halifax during the day, they can't get here in time for an evening meeting or whatever. There's a variety of things that it could be. And that was really the main change in that one, I believe, was just to take that limit out of having 3 times, meeting 3 times in a year.
I have a bunch of questions. I'm sorry, I just can't tell which policy we're in, so I'm just going to ask questions. I
Go for
think
it,
I'm in
go
the
for it.
main one. But I will, other questions from other members of council? All right, I'm going to go through this, I think chronologically. Although there's something I'm looking for that may have been before this. 5.7.9, am I in the right policy? Committee may receive presentations from the public upon approval of the chair. It's just a question, does that include COW? Because I never know until I arrive, till I get the agenda who's presenting. I know if it goes to accessibility or planning, I am assuming that the chair is speaking to staff. If that's the case, I would like to add that it would be nice to know who's presenting.
Okay.
I never know what's happening until I get the agenda.
Probably should be everyone who's presenting before we get the agenda.
Well, I'm assuming
Yes.
that if it comes to accessibility, that the chair, I'm looking at you, Councillor Ingham, that the chair has decided that this is together, that this is a good, that we'll have this presentation, but no, I never know, and council doesn't know. So there was a time when the CAO would meet with me and talk about what was upcoming. So the chair had some input. That hasn't happened for quite a long time. I'm told.
Sorry, just to clarify, are you talking about committee of the whole meeting?
I am.
Okay.
So there was a time when I know with Mayor Cantwell and early in my turn that there was a discussion about this is what's coming on
Okay.
to committee of the whole, but that has not happened in recent time. I get the agenda and that's
that's
first
when you
I know
find out.
what's happening.
Okay. Certainly we can change the wording here. We can look at a new process.
So
for
I
that.
understand, I think it makes, that statement makes sense. And I know that it's happened at at PAC when I was chair. I know that Director Lake, I just about called you Councillor Lake, but Director Lake would say, don't know if that's a promotion or demotion, but and I certainly understand it happening on Accessibility Committee.
Sorry, where did you see that?
It's the committees of council.
It's the committees of council policy,
5.7.9.
5.7.9. It says the committee may receive presentations from the public. I assume that, or groups, and the chair, upon approval of the chair. I don't think that's happening
That's in there, but it's not happening.
consistently.
Yeah.
I
I
assume.
think it's happening for the committees.
For the
but not
committees.
And I
specifically
said,
for
does that
this
include
meeting.
committee of
Right.
the whole?
Right,
That's-
and we
that's-
didn't really think, I don't think we thought about committee of the
No,
whole. We
no, we
just
didn't
thought
think
about all
about
the
that.
other.
But it
committees.
does make
It's
sense.
just a question.
It makes sense to me because, well, the other committees were doing it, so it does make sense to me.
And then following in that area, 5.7.12. Understand not to give specific members. No member of a committee shall give specific directions to any staff member at any committee meeting. That said, again, looking back at our committees, PAC and also accessibility, where there is a staff person appointed, it is my understanding and experience that discussion happens, and it's maybe not, it's consultation or it's discussion. So how does that, might that come back and bite the chair if the chair of accessibility is talking to the staff and saying,
So how I read that, and this is just my interpretation of it, but it would be that it's like one member of a committee, so like one member of accessibility coming to me or going to Barb and saying,
yes.
I want you to look into this further or whatever it may be, but maybe we can take.
But if Councillor Ingham is talking
Yeah.
to Barb and saying, you know, whatever, you know, let's move it in this direction, and might say, okay, then you will do this, or you will invite so-and-so, that would be giving direction. So
So can I ask then, would that not be something that would be a consensus of the committee? So it would come out of the committee as a whole rather than one person?
it's not always, I know, and some of you have been chair of PAC, certainly it was the tradition, has been the tradition that the chair of PAC and the director of planning meet in advance of the agenda going out, and you know, there's a fairly free flow of information, and that does not involve the committee. That's been our practice.
I think
Councillor Madeira.
here, if I might be confusing our discussions, but I thought this was so that we don't have a committee member
Yes,
who is not necessarily the chair.
I understand that.
Trying, so that's what we were trying to address,
Okay.
was issues where individual members, because they're part of a committee, feel empowered to give staff direction.
And
we
I
can make it
understand
clear
that, but I'm concerned that the wording is loose enough that somebody could say, well, you as chair of PAC, you shouldn't be talking to Director Lake by yourself. That is my concern.
So what would you?
I don't know, but that is my concern. I think it's reasonable that the chair of a committee has a chance to talk about the agenda, and I mean, that's what your job is.
Can I ask a question? As a chair, you would be having a discussion with a staff member on what's going to happen at the meeting. But I'm trying to think back, either audit or PAC or anything else. I don't ever remember giving direction. Well, I wouldn't. Because it's not my role.
Yeah.
I'm chairing a meeting. We can have a discussion, but I haven't had discussions with anyone. I've never given direction, I don't think. But we chat back and forth, and whether they take that in their role of their job or not, quite honestly, is up to them and the CAO. So I guess I still, whether I'm the chair or not, should never be giving direction. We can discuss, but we can't, unless I'm
Okay.
talking to CAO, I cannot give direction.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of a situation, and Councillor Ingham could be talking to Barb and saying, you know, I'm just riffing right now.
Because that's
There's an issue that, and how about if we bring so-and-so into the next committee to talk about, help us through this issue? that could be construed as direction.
Mhm.
It's a suggestion and staff doesn't have to do it, but in my experience, usually if you have those conversations, staff has said, yeah, let's do that, or we might be saying, let's, there's an item and the chair of PAC might say, you know, why don't we wait until after such and such has happened, and then this particular item might fall, you might work better. Are those not directions?
Yeah, those are. I think it's sort of the word direction is sort of confusing because I just look back at our accessibility meeting on Monday and I probably said to Barb many times, because we had a long discussion, do you have enough information? Do you know where the committee stands? And as I think we were in budget season, I think you spoke to Aaron and you spoke to the council about we're not getting a clear consensus. So it is the job of the chair to provide clear consensus of the committee, because you're not mind readers, so staff can't always say, I'm not sure, I've heard a lot of things. The chair has to sort of condense it and say, this is where the committee stands. So I do think it's the role of the chair, but whether you're actually giving direction on, we want you to do this, but yeah, so.
No, thank you. Through the chair, excuse me, through the chair to council. First of all, the discussion you're having this morning relative to policy is very normal. And while I haven't been privy to previous policy discussions, I've never worked anywhere where a policy discussion didn't elicit a variety of views and need for clarification. So this is absolutely, you're spot on in terms of the discussion. With respect to this particular issue, it could be something of the nature of no member of a committee other than the chair shall request information from staff and so forth. Usually if there's an impasse in the inability to make a decision, there's usually a gap in terms of the information the committee has. It would be absolutely appropriate that the chair, in this case, we use the word direction, but request, to give direction to staff, make requests to staff for additional information relative to the workings of the committee. And I just provide this as an illustrative example that normally as chair of any committee, usually if there's an impasse or there's something's being held in abeyance, it's usually attributed to there's some ambiguity in terms of information, whatever, and it would be most appropriate. So in the case of our chair of PAC, to be working with our director and asking for additional information. Some might interpret that you're giving direction to staff to go get the information, but the nuance of it is that all of our chairs are going to be making requests to staff for additional information should there be a need with respect to the committee. And if we can craft some words around that so as to better reflect that, so it's no member of committee other than the chair shall make requests for additional information, and so forth with the staff. I just provide that. And again, not being privy to the previous discussions, it might be helpful in that regard. Thank you.
That's good. It was just wording that I said, somebody way down the road could then say, you shouldn't be doing that. That's what the chair.
Did you get that then? Lauren?
Yes.
Shall I continue? In 5.10.2, I'm really happy to see that membership on those committees is no longer coming to council. It didn't in the past, and then for some reason that are beyond my comprehension, in the last council, those were brought to council, and I'm pleased to see that change. So thank you for that. And my biggest concern, and something that I will speak to when we have comments, is really around this big new section on council member attendance. And it's probably a larger question in my comment, and that is, I would love to have this discussion more fully at some time. It might be an orientation kind of discussion about really what is the role of council. Again, the MGA is loose on what the role of council is. There's a couple of paragraphs on what the mayor can do, and that a member of council can't miss more than 3 meetings in a row, and council passes policy. In my view, and I recognize this may just be my view, I think members of council have a real responsibility in constituency work. And so I am concerned about the attendance of changing the virtual attendance to being not to allow anybody to participate by virtually. And I think of what happened in Kentville a number of terms ago where 3, I believe, members of council spent the winters in Florida. I also was reading an article a few weeks ago. It may have happened earlier, but I was reading it a few weeks ago in Calgary where they had this basically the policy that's being recommended. And one of their counselors was on the golf course. And so they tightened it up considerably. And the comment in the news article was that counselors have an important role that is beyond just showing up virtually or here and making decisions, but being in the community. And I know we don't have a lot of guidance on that. But so let me ask my question. I certainly understand and agree with making accommodations under certain circumstances. But I don't agree with this in terms of, when I was consulting, one of the reasons I retired from that was I couldn't juggle the travel and being on council. I just could not be present, and we didn't have a virtual policy at that time. And so I had no option, but I have concerns about this particular one. And I wonder how, let me form it as a question. How does the task force see this happening with no guardrails on it for somebody who is on council but goes to Florida for 3 months, is not present in the community, could certainly be present online, but is not present in the community? Did you have any discussion about that? Councillor Ingham, and then
Yeah, I mean, we did discuss this. I think the major focus that we had was 3 was too restrictive, to say just 3. And it was, our thinking was, you're in Halifax for the day and you just can't get back, you join virtual, right? So, and I know the municipality of Kings, they're allowed to do virtual on all their committees of council and all their, COW and council meetings, they're allowed to do that. There's no restrictions on that. I can't control when people are gonna go away and then they're not. You could say that you're not going away and then you can. So I guess, and also with, we want to be able to provide this with a more, accessible and inclusive lens. That was a strong factor in us doing this. And so say if somebody, wasn't able to attend, regularly in person because of restrictions, but they have all this, good advice and a lot to add to everything. We want to be able to include them. And as, we're coming out of the pandemic, we did a lot of virtual. Things have really changed in the last 2 years. Our demographics have changed. We want to make sure that we're inclusive when people are going to run for council and they have the opportunity to say, okay, well, I have another job, because this job doesn't allow you to just, make a living for many people for this job. So we need to, appeal to the broader range. So, I mean, as far as, leaving for, Florida or Hawaii or whatever for months on end, I guess we can't really control that. I mean, and people are going to say,
not with this.
yeah, so you can't say that. But I think the thinking was, it was just so restrictive to say, on the fact of we're all rushing around. We all have busy lives. We've read the package. We want to be able to contribute, but yes, we're in Halifax. Do you know what I mean? So we can't control everything is our thinking, but we want to include more. So that was our thinking. Does that say it right on our thinking?
I think it was even broad, like, you don't even have to be traveling around. Like if I was a single mom and my babysitter called sick, because we have a policy where you can have a babysitter, but then I would be stuck. So either don't come or don't tune in and it looks like I don't care, but that wouldn't be it. So it has to give people some flexibility. And that could happen to me 3 times or anyone 3 times. For various reasons, I guess. 3 just seemed restrictive. And then I think we got into it and we discussed it the last time. Who's deciding what's a valid reason and what's not? Because then it became like really tricky. But I think we all discussed it was, you know what, as we sit around this table, we're all adults who signed up for something. If I have an issue with Isabel not showing up, we should have a discussion about it and say, look, we don't feel like you're present and you're not sure what's happening. Let's all be adults and have a real good conversation about it. And I think that happens at the orientation, not halfway through. I think at the orientation, as a group, everyone would sit down and say, these are the expectations of sitting around this table. This is what everyone's doing. This is what we've got. And I think, you know, it builds a really great discussion and team from the beginning. I don't know if the word's team, but at least a group of people who are looking for the same goals around the table. But I think that's what we came to, but I'm
Can I throw something out there as well? Just, I believe as well, the discussion was to do with the whole code of conduct that was revised. It's more robust now and it talks more about respect and you know, what the expectation is. So I think that sort of plays into that as well.
Does it define the expectation? I mean, that still sounds pretty loose. Does the code of, I mean, I didn't see anything. in the
There's
code of-
nothing specific that
Yeah,
says you
I
can't
see.
go abroad for 3 months, I don't
Yeah.
believe, but.
Okay. All right, so other questions, and then I guess we'll put, there are 3 motions.
There are a few. We can do, if you want, I can do them.
I'm on page 41 that says there are draft motions.
So there's motions in each of the reports. So I think there's 3 motions under the committees of council
Yes.
report,
Can I
and
ask a
then there's
question?
another couple under the virtual.
Can I ask a question? Mayor, can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just was thinking about how this go. So under the new MGA, is there a way, or is there a way, I guess, a way for us to dismiss a counselor?
Yes, yeah.
If you
If
miss
they,
3 in
if
a
you
row.
miss 3 regular meetings of
3
council consecutively
regular.
without leave of council. So if
Without
council
an
have agreed
excuse.
that it's okay that
If you have
that
a
you
heart
missed those
attack,
3.
probably
Like
say
if,
so.
yeah.
For example, I know. No, fair, yeah, fair enough. Okay, so 3, but it's 3 council meetings,
Consecutive.
Yeah.
but, but it's council, not committee of the whole, not, okay, thank you.
All right, I'm just. Part was very confusing. All right, if there are, did I see any other lights? Ian, you're good. So just so that I understand it, so there is a committee of council policy that deals with amendments per attached committees, and those deal with the repeal of the attendance, participation, and code of conduct. And then the next one deals with virtual. Okay. Okay. All right. So if there's no other comments or questions, I will ask for a mover of committee of council policy amendments, and maybe, I don't know if you have a chair of your task force or one of you.
We can take
Erin.
turns.
Okay.
I can move the first one.
Okay, thank you.
We can take
Councillor
turns, maybe. I can move
That
this
would be
one.
good.
I would move that the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve amendments as per that the attached committees of council policy number 110-001. That the committee of the whole is that,
Yeah,
I just continue? Or are we
I
good?
think so. That's where I was.
Yeah, I'm just going to read A. Okay. Okay, next paragraph. The committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. The council approves the repeal of attendance and participation policy for council policy number 110-012. And that the committee of the whole,
Separately.
I was doing A.
I understand, but they're 2 different items.
Yeah, I would vote on them separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to start.
So
The
should I
first
go
motion
back?
is the repeal of attendance, and the second part is the code of conduct versus. One might agree with one, but not the other.
Okay, so you want me to just stop?
Stop, and I'll get a seconder if I could.
Okay.
Councillor Butler. All right, are there any questions or comments related to that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and if you would put your mics on, please, when you say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Just for accessibility.
Maybe
Um,
for clarity on that.
Yeah.
You should just say that it passed unanimously or it passed 5 to
Okay,
2.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Yes, it passed unanimously.
Can I have some clarity on what motion you just passed?
We
Was
just
it the
passed
committees of
the
council
repeal
one?
of the
Repeal
attendance
of the
policy.
attendance.
The repeal of the attendance. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Policy 110-012.
Okay,
We
thank
just
you.
passed.
Would you like to continue with
I
the
could, I'd
second
like,
half?
I would happy to continue. The committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the introduction of a code of conduct for citizen committee members as attached to RFD 007-2024.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Ingham. Any comments, questions? Seeing none? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? That also passed unanimously. Now, a mover for the next one, which has also two separate motions
So you
within.
do, so you're doing the virtual. We're doing the
We're doing the virtual
So
one.
you're coming back, sorry, are you coming back to the committees of council one policy?
The first one had
Was there a
3
first one we
motions.
did? Yeah.
We didn't do.
It's like, I moved it, we didn't get a second one.
The A, the first part on A.
And I
thought that
apologize, I've
intro
clearly
dealt with-
confused everyone with this, I'm
totally
really
confused.
sorry.
I thought this intro dealt with these two.
So the committees of council policy had 3 motions attached to it. One was the amendments, approving the amendments of to that policy. The second was repealing the attendance policy, and the third was the code of conduct for citizen
All
committee
right,
members.
so I'm
So
very confused. What are the amendments to that policy?
the pieces that we took out of the attendance, so, and stuff
Which we
we talked,
approved the attendance. We did the attendance policy separately.
yeah, we repealed that
Yes,
separately. And so the discussion that we had on, the bigger discussion that we had earlier was the committees of council policy, the 5 points.
so that's the virtual policy.
No, there's no, virtual meeting policy is about the attending
All right, could
virtually.
you summarize quickly for me? Because I'm confused. I'm not
Okay.
being on that committee.
5.12 is the amendments to the committees of council policy, correct?
5.1.
Which we discussed.
Yes, and just go over that again so I can.
The first one, we didn't approve. Yeah. I didn't get a second.
Right.
So go back to that then.
Sorry, I did think that was the intro to those two others. Now I'm looking for 5.2. All right, we have a mover for the first one of those motions. We should do these motions separately in the future. And could I have a seconder, please, for that motion,
I will second
Councillor
that.
Butler?
Yep.
And that deals with council membership 5.2.
I'm not sure what that is. I need to find that.
What I'm looking for is some
Amendments.
5.12.
5.12. Yes, I have that.
Sorry, councillor Butler, could you explain what 5.12 is? I'm looking at.
It's page 50 of the whole package. It is the council member attendance amendments that were now part of the main policy. The main committees of council policy.
Right, sorry.
That's okay.
5.12, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's an
I was
additional
looking
one
at
at
5.1.2.
5.3.8 as well.
Yeah.
And my question is, how does not inform the virtual meeting policy?
No, this is to do with repealing of the attendance policy.
Yes, okay. Yeah, yes, okay. So we have a mover and a seconder. Are there any comments or questions or confusions?
It's clear as
Okay,
Councillor Palmadier?
so this is the one that we're gonna clarify the question about giving direction to staff, correct?
That is contained in this policy, yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna modify that. and
We're
that
going to,
will-
yeah, so I can bring that back to council with the modifications that we
Thank you.
discussed here. Yeah.
And the modification being generally that the chair of
chair.
a committee can have discussions to work out a process with the, whoever the staff person is. Right, okay.
Can I ask- So that will, but that passed as a unanimous motion, so we should say.
So it
it was-
hasn't
that one
voted, haven't
didn't-
voted on it yet.
That one was.
Yep.
This one we're doing right now.
Yes, my mistake. I thought that first thing was an intro to those two. We should have these in the future. I would ask as separate motions. It's very confusing. No, I just think it's, yeah, I think the way this is written is confusing. However, I think we're back to the first one. We have a mover and a seconder with Councillor Butler. Are there any questions or comments? No. With amendments that will come back, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That, opposed? That passed unanimously. All right. So now we are moving towards virtual meeting policy amendments, and there are two. Would somebody from
I'll
the committee,
put that
Councillor
on.
Ingham?
I would move that the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. That council approve amendments as per the attached virtual meeting policy 110-014.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Madeira Voss. Are there any questions or comments? I do. I'm going to pass the chair over to the deputy mayor. I don't support this. I fully recognize I may be in the minority here. I do appreciate and agree that we should be making accommodations for accessibility. I believe that we have done a fair bit to address that, and certainly in a new facility, we will do more. I firmly believe that, I believe two things. I believe that a council early in its term needs to have a good discussion about the role of council, and maybe actually it's a good discussion to have as we end our term to help the community engage in this. I don't believe that a member of council or a council is here simply to come to a meeting like this and say yay or nay, or to give their opinion. I actually agree with the individual who spoke at public input. I think members of council have a really strong responsibility to be in the community and talking to the community. And I would say that to a person, everybody on this council does. So I make no comments about anybody currently here. I think whether you're, walking the dog or whether you're participating in events in the community, which all of us do, we have the ear of the community. I do worry in the future that this policy could negate that. And I think that people who run for council, understanding, as I mentioned, my own personal situation, there was a point, and I was at a point in my career where I decided I had a successful consulting career, but I just couldn't travel the country and be on council and be present in the community. So I made a decision to be here and not there. That was a personal decision, but I firmly expect my representatives on council to be in the community and hearing what I'm saying. And it is more than just sitting here at council. So for that reason, while I do accept the intent, I think it is too loose. And I think that currently, as it's written, this opens us to a situation that happened in Kentville, where while those members of council were on, I think it was Skype at the time, it was before Zoom, they were not present in the community. And I know, at least personally, when I am participating online, when we have done that, I'm not as present as I am when I am physically in the room with you. And from the perspective of a chair, with the current technology, it is hard to see, you know, if one of our members of council was up there, and I think that there are things that we can do so that we don't need that big motion. We all have laptops. I would rather see a big picture of a member of council there than I would the agenda, but that's just my perspective. So for those reasons, I can't support this. I think it's too loose. I would support something that came back that was tighter, but I can't support this. Those are my comments.
Anyone else wish to comment? Oh, Councillor Palmer.
If I may, Your Honor, the existing policy, is it tight enough?
You're asking me?
Yes, I am.
I believe it's tight enough. I'm also believe that it could be a little more flexible. I mean, I agree that 3 might be too few. We have been pretty open with that. I could see 3 are mine to, if I want to go on vacation, but I still want to connect in. But then what happens when I have an emergency, as Councillor McKay said, I do think we have, we have a childcare policy. Maybe we don't promote it as much. Maybe we don't, I don't know what we do if you had a baby and your babysitter wasn't there. Are we nimble enough to, to get somebody to come in? You could certainly put your baby in the, I mean, I don't know that we have those in place, but I really think this is so loose that you literally could be in Florida for 3 months. And I think if you are, whether you're in Florida for 3 months or your job is always taking you, as mine did, traveling across the country, you're not in the headspace to be really present with your community. So it's maybe tighter than it needs to be, but this is too loose.
And I don't totally disagree with you at all. And in fact, I think that would be totally wrong if somebody moved to Florida for the winter. I just don't know how we could tighten that up. I mean, is there a way we can do that? That would be my question. I mean, I'd be all for it if we can, but I'm just not sure we can. Like, and how would you propose? Like, what would you? How would you do? What would you see that as a
Off the top
mechanic?
of my head, I'm not
Yeah.
part of that committee, but I think, as I say, I agree with the sentiments, but I think it's just too open now, and to say you can be virtually anytime and therefore anywhere. We got away from saying, if you're sick or if you have a family emergency, we got away from that to allow for some flexibility. So I don't know, is the 3 too restrictive? Have we found that? For me, it's a bigger discussion about what is our role as a counselor? Is it, and I don't have an answer, maybe the general consensus of our community is you just want us to sit here, not you, but you, the community, do you want us just to sit here and get staff reports and have a discussion and say yay or nay, and then staff go and do that? Or do we have a different kind of leadership role? We've never had an opportunity. This is a council that came in COVID. We didn't ever have a strategic planning session. We didn't have good orientation, not because we didn't have the resources to do that, but we just couldn't. And so, I think the leadership of a municipality is really important. I think there's lots of things that a council does beyond this, but I am concerned that this policy, as loose as I feel it is, would negate those other things that I believe, and that, recognizing we haven't had a discussion, members of council should be doing in their community. And so for that reason, I just can't support this. Councilor, oh, sorry.
Councillor.
Thank you. I agree that, one, I think everyone around this table has been engaged and here and all of those things. So I don't think we're talking about this group, and it is about policy about going forward. But I think because I was a big supporter of it when it first came in, and then as I went through it, I'm like, it really doesn't matter what we write in there because the MGA says 3. So we can put whatever expectations we want they're irrelevant. So that's why I thought having a discussion, a respectful discussion amongst adults would maybe be our only recourse, because we've never done that either, or not in my last council or this one. But if to the community, if you want someone who is engaged in the community and sitting at this table, when you go to the polls, that's your chance. And if someone is going to be absent, they're gonna take, because they can not show up to any committee meetings, not show up to committee of the whole, go miss, show up, virtual, miss. It doesn't matter what we write on the piece of paper, people are gonna, if they're gonna abuse it, they are gonna abuse it. And that's the personality, and we have no recourse whether we write it down or whether we don't. That's why I came to the point of, well, I'd rather be accessible and have people who really want to be at the table, even if it's virtual, more than 3 times a year, then I would be okay with that if they were engaged in this community and here and making a contribution, whether it was online or in person. That's where I came to, because I think we can't change the personality. And for all those voters who are listening, vote and ask the questions that you want to know if they're going to be at the table. And that will be coming in October. So that would be the time to ask.
All right. I think Councilor Madera-Voss first.
I agree with the comments that Councillor McKay made. We had a very, very thorough discussion at the committee level on this policy. And I fully agree with you, Mayor Donovan, that engagement is really important. People elect us to be responsible, to be present, to do all of those things. I do not believe that an attendance policy is the way to ensure that that's done. I think we need to be accountable for coming, but you could come to every single meeting and not be engaged. The level of our commitment, the level of our engagement, the level of our concern for our committee, for our community and the work that we do is not necessarily how we are physically present or virtually present. It is the way we prepare for meetings, the way we talk to constituents. There's so many things that determine the quality of our engagement. And I think that's what's really important, is how we involved. And I think we then try to address that through the code of conduct. We did make changes that speak specifically to engagement, to be present and be engaged, and whether it was virtual or in person. So I think we all have that goal. We all want people to be involved and to contribute, and to be able to contribute in a significant and genuine way. But at the same time, we don't want to risk being exclusionary. And I think that was the thing that we wanted to recognize, the options that are available. And then there was the whole question is, who determines if it's a valid reason or not, right? We said 3 and getting permission, and there are so many questions around those processes, and who amongst us has that say in what we accept as a valid reason or not. So looking at all that, we just felt we want to stress the importance of being engaged. We want to look at that really from a code of conduct perspective, as opposed to an attendance perspective, because really that is what we're talking about, is code of conduct and how people behave as council, as members of council.
Councilor Palmer, did you have questions?
It's-
And then Councilor Ingham.
So it's really only a code of conduct. I mean, it still wouldn't, if I decided to move to Florida once I was elected, or if in this fall I got elected, I moved to Florida, and I showed up virtually for the council meetings, virtually would count. So there would be absolutely nothing the council could do. It's that correct by the MDA, by the MDA.
Can I just add, I believe you'd have to still live in Wolfville to be a member of council. You
Yes.
couldn't move to Florida.
No,
and still
because
be a
you could
councillor.
go for the winter.
For the winter.
Oh.
Yeah, or Scotland, yeah. So, for the summer, I would.
Why would you want to go there for the summer?
Okay, Councilor
Okay, so I've heard what everybody says. Again, I'm part of this committee, so the discussion was very fulsome. So I do agree with my fellow counselors, McKay and Madeira Voss. I think we're focusing on leaving like too much saying we're going to Florida. So here's the issue. Every one of us sitting around this table may live in Wolfville, but may not participate in anything external in this whole town. So there's so many activities that we all show up to. And a lot of the times we show up to events that we just love. And this isn't even a job because we're just loving it. So what if somebody sitting here is in Wolfville the whole time? They haven't shown up to any events that staff has put on. It's the same thing. They're not really available. So we're focusing on going away. So this to me was trying to be the most inclusive, follow the MGA and make it more inclusive, I guess, and accessible. We don't know who's going to run again. We also don't know, as we talked about on accessibility the other day, that we have temporary disabilities. You could break your leg and not be able to get out for so long. Then you're not going out to the community as much as you used to either, but you're still available. So we're focusing on one issue that may or may not happen. And maybe it hasn't happened around this table and we have to be cognizant, but I'm just looking at the bigger picture. I do obviously support this policy, so I will be voting I will be voting for it. And that's just my comment.
Okay.
I have another.
You want to speak again?
I do. One of the problems with the committee of 4, which was a concern that we had, is we have a voting block of people who've had a lot of time to discuss this. And there's an unfairness with that, I believe. I don't think we are focusing. I think we know in our geographic area, not very long ago, that happened. We know that there are other places in Canada where that happened because of the looseness of their policy. And in each case, in 2 cases, Calgary and Kentville, they tightened that up. And so I don't think it's a small thing. I think it's a big thing. And in the absence of the rest of council having the opportunity of that fulsome discussion and coming up with this, there's an element of unfairness, I think. But anyways, I will not be supporting this, and I will not be supporting it for reasons that I think it still needs to be tweaked.
Okay. Nelson. Do we want to table this discussion to the next cow if there's a feeling of uneasy between the 3 others that are not on this committee? Because there were 4 of us. I do think it's fair. I think this is a fulsome discussion, but if there are 3 of you who want to say you want to have a deeper dive into it, and have more time to consider it, I look to anyone else, but
You're putting on a motion to table?
I'm asking. If there isn't a level of comfort, then let's just table it. And if it's fine, then it's fine. Okay, Councillor Palmer.
I would be open to, our hands are tied with the MGA. That's the reality of it, though, I think. I mean, I would agree with the mayor 100% that there's just kind of loopholes in this, and I would be adamantly opposed to anybody not being in town and still be on council. But I'm not sure that there's anything we can do to tighten it up in reality. I mean, we can make any policy we want, but if it doesn't have any teeth, what do you do? If somebody could come up with any other suggestions that would tighten it up, I think we should discuss it further, and I would support the mayor on that.
If I could, in terms of the MGA, you could go to Florida for 2 meetings for basically February and the March council, come back for April. The MGA doesn't say anything about the virtual policy. We have added that. So with respect to the MGA, you could be in Florida virtually, and with our current policy, those don't count against you as missing 3. So, the MGA is very loose. It doesn't talk about virtual policy. The MGA does say, and I mentioned a heart attack, but if you just couldn't get virtually or otherwise, this council, after you miss 3, this council could say, well, Counselor so-and-so is a good counselor. They, they are in ICU. We expect them to be back next month. So you wouldn't get kicked off. So council has the discretion to say, you missed 3, but there were extenuating reasons that we accept it. It really is up to council, you're not just 3 and you're out.
Town clerk?
Just a suggestion that maybe it's a separate thing from virtual meeting. Virtual meeting is the ability to attend the meetings virtually, but maybe the whole piece around the expectation again that the councillor or a councillor is not spending 3 months at a time out of the town is part of the code of conduct. Maybe there's something in the code of
exactly what we
conduct
said.
that we could reword and strengthen for that piece of it. Is just a
It might.
suggestion.
I personally don't think, I think if you're on council, unless there are and I recognize that there are extenuating meetings that you may get elected and you just cannot make it physically into this building. Then I think we need to make accommodations for that. I believe if we don't have a good child, I think we do have good, I think we have childcare policies, whether those are good or whether we are able to be nimble enough to put that in place in case a member of council needed to bring their child in. Maybe we need to work on that. So there are some supports, but I do not feel that a member of council who was continually, and maybe we need to make 3, 5. I don't know, but if a person takes this job and they were, as in my last work job, constantly out of town, particularly when meetings are, one of the problems when you travel for business is that you schedule around what you know is going to happen. And then suddenly there's a committee of the whole meeting on February 14th, but you plan to be in Edmonton. And so, I think we have to be flexible when we are flexible with our timing, but we are pretty good. We know what's happening from month to month. I just have a problem with the virtual part of it, and also the code of conduct. Yes, I think we can strengthen. But we do have a motion. I don't know if we have a motion to table.
We do have a motion on the floor and we have a seconder. And I personally, I would like to call the question. I do want to say I take issue with the comment that we are 4 people and we've had an advantage that others don't.
You are voting block.
We have put so many policy changes together that has not come up as a concern until this particular item. And if that could have been applied to everything we have put forward. And I think we made the effort in all of these to look to the future and not to the past. Not look at what happened where, or not happened, in Ireland, or what happened in Vancouver, or wherever it is, or because we haven't had that issue in this council. And I don't think this council has ever had, to my knowledge, anybody who's gone to Florida for 3 months and voted for there. Maybe they have, but I'm not aware of
Not
it.
this council, but last council.
Well, so we are making decisions not just based on past, we're making decisions for the future. And what we're trying to do is be as inclusive as possible and to take advantage of our current technology and the things that make people participate in. And that's what the goal of this was. It was not to say, we're going to penalize people because of what last council did or Kentville did or whatever. I don't think that this is the mechanism that really we need to ensure that councillors who run for council and are elected are engaged and responsible and responsive. I think this is, I do think it is part of code of conduct or somewhere else, but I don't believe that it belongs in a policy related to virtual attendance. I think it's a misplaced concern with this. So
Respectfully, I totally disagree with you. And I think that in addition to being inclusive, we need to think about being responsive to our community. And I don't feel I have had fulsome discussion, I would support a tabling or the vote, whatever is the wish of council. But I think this is, I think we learned from other communities. I think we learned from more fulsome discussion, including discussion with our community.
Okay, the question's been called. Oops. Okay, the question's been called. Do we want to put a stall on this motion or do we want to vote?
What's the process?
Well, you could put the question on and you can vote on it.
No one's answered my question, so if that's the case, then I will be voting for it.
What was your question again?
Did you want?
Did the three people who were not on this committee,
Oh.
are you comfortable? And if you don't need a, so I hear one. Not sure, so.
Okay, so let's vote.
So we're putting the question.
I am going with the question being called. All those in favor, please indicate.
When the three of us.
Three of
right?
us, yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay? You can't abstain. An abstain is a no.
Abstain is a no. You know what, I think I would like to table it, so I'm gonna say no, nay. I think we should table it.
It's too late. It's too late. Let's table it.
So the vote was 5-2 in favor of the motion. So it passes.
I just don't think if I-
No, there is a right.
Yeah, that's the.
All right.
Your worship.
Is it a hard stop at lunch or if not, I can bring in lunch and other.
Your Honor, could we call for a 10-minute recess?
Can we, let's just, we still got one motion in that. So who was moved?
Okay, so do we?
Yeah, you, Jen. Yes. So the second part of B.
The second part. I would move that the committee of whole forward the following motion to council for decision. The council approve the repeal of telephone and electronic polls policy number 110-008.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Butler, are there any comments or questions on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Did I hear a call for a short break? So we will take a 10-minute break and be back here by 14 minutes after. missing two counselors. I'm sure they will walk in a few minutes. So we are down to the council conference and professional development policy amendments. And Laura, did you?
Still me.
Yes, still you. Is there anything you wanted to?
All the information is there in the report. We're again just wanting to we wanted to change it from what it was previously to introduce a stipend for council to sort of again remove a barrier that was quite restrictive.
Yeah. Could I ask a question, maybe of members of the committee, or maybe it's, and unfortunately, Jenny, you are the budget person, but I understand the council will get a stipend for the 4 years of their term. How will that work in the budget year?
Yeah, that's a piece I'm not sure of. We have to that will inform the budget process, and that's a conversation we have to have with Beth as to what that looks like, whether it's something that's I believe the intent was, and I don't know if Jenny has any other information, probably not at this point, but the intent was to have that sum of money, whatever it is, for each councillor at the beginning of the 4 years. And then because if the first year you weren't maybe sure of what you wanted to attend, then maybe there's like 3 or 4 you want to attend in the second year. So that bucket of money would be there to be able to use for that, is my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. I guess you could can we create a reserve? How we do that?
You're
There's
asking
not-
the
maybe
wrong
when
person.
Beth is here, but those are questions that we
And
can
this
ask.
is to inform, like it would be for the next council coming in.
Yes, I understand.
So,
I
yeah.
understand. Because we used to I don't think anybody's gone to FCM for a decade, but no, actually that's not true. It was when it was in Halifax, but I think some people went to environmental sustainability. But we would draw and you could go to a big conference a certain year
that's right,
of
yeah.
council, but then that was budgeted for because not everybody went.
Yeah, so
You went.
and I think the intent here is that everyone gets the sort of same amount and you can choose what you want it for.
All right. Guess we don't have that motion on the floor. Somebody like to move that motion? Mr. Butler?
Thank you. It's my turn. I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve amendments as per the attached policy, council conference and professional development policy 110-004.
And a seconder, please. Councillor McKay, are there any other questions on that? You can bring us back some information on how that affects the budget process for council. That's not really a question, it's a comment. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That was unanimous, I believe. And motion for routine access policy. Jody?
Sure. We're going around the table. Okay. I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve amendments as per the attached policy, routine access policy number 120-010.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Thank you,
I'll second that.
Councillor Butler. Are there any questions? Comments? I have a question. There's something in the report that says that the clerk will, if somebody asks for a document, the clerk will give one hard copy to the individual.
And that's in the policy?
I believe it's in the policy.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah,
yeah,
it does
my-
state that, but I think that's actually what's in the MGA
Oh,
and in the
okay.
FOIPOP
Okay.
Act. So, but it can be an electronic.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where you were
Yeah,
going,
that-
yeah.
So my question was really, and this kind of came up in our discussion at audit, I believe we have the option to charge staff time for FOIPOP.
Yeah.
Do we ever?
Well, I haven't had one yet. But it would depend on how much time is used. So I think they get like, it's something like 2 hours free
Okay.
to search for documents. If at the beginning of the process, if they're looking for lengthy stuff, then absolutely we can say, you know what, we do a preliminary search and speak to other staff and say, what have you got? How long is it going to take you to find it? And then if it's going to be like, this is going to be a huge file, then we can figure out then a sort of.
So
a
that's
cost.
in a separate.
That's in the
policy.
FOIPOP.
I mentioned that because
and
I'm
BMG.
aware of some of the FOIPOPs and I know it's at stake and taken staff
Yeah.
a great deal of.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what
time,
the
months.
past practice has been, but certainly we can use
From an
that if we
audit
need.
perspective, something to keep an eye on. Councillor McKay?
I don't think I've ever seen a FOIPOP policy come here. Is it just the general FOIPOP policy?
It's, yeah,
and then
it's
it tells us
legislation,
how
sorry,
much
it's
we
like,
do it?
it's not a policy, it's legislation.
Of ours.
It's
So
the
it'll
Freedom
allow-
of Information Act, yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
and yes, so then you can charge for the time. And do we have a policy when we do enact that then, or is it just at the discretion of staff?
Thanks.
We follow the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. MG,
But we've never
which-
charged, so I'm wondering when.
I
would
can't
we
say
ever-
we've never charged, not to
Okay.
my knowledge.
I
but
don't remember
I'm not
either.
sure.
I don't think we have, and but just looking at some of the FOIPOPs that other Mike was dealing with, that they were quite
Mm.
time consuming and it wasn't just one, it was
Yeah.
one and then it built on another. and built
Yeah.
on another.
That's why I was asking, do we have a policy
We-
of when we enact it?
We have a municipal fees policy, which I don't
Yes.
know if it's in that,
Yeah.
but I can certainly check and maybe we can, I
Maybe
can
we
certainly look
at
into
that,
that.
and if it's.
Yeah, I'm just
Gonna-
thinking staff time and the
absolutely.
cost and, the balance of transparency with the cost that it's taking to be transparent. At least we should, even to say, even if I don't charge you for that, to say this was this much money of
Mhm.
staff time, that meant that staff couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Ready for a question? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That was passed unanimously. All right. That brings us to King's Transit budget and Valley Waste budget. And,
I'm going to stay here.
oh, okay. Good for you.
Unless Jenny wants to come up. We don't have a huge amount of information. Obviously, Mike McLean would have been the person to present this and Beth's not here. Couple of things I can mention is just that we have had the KTA and the Valley Waste budget has actually come to us 2 months earlier than we normally get it, which has been great because it can inform the budget. The information of what it is there. So there's an increase in both of them from last year. And in accordance with the IMSA, we need basically a motion passed from council to approve those. And I don't really have much more else than that, unless to say if there's any questions, I certainly will take them back and get some answers for you.
Are there any questions?
Um,
Sir Butler?
Just a question about the specific motions. Do they need the amounts put in the motions, the increase?
I don't believe so because they're in the report and we mentioned them. Like we looked at last year's and they weren't there, so.
And I believe from Mike's email to us is that we are required to, we're required to approve them. That gets approved at the board level.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Councillor McKay because she's the alternate on the IMSA. So you can second it, but Councillor McKay, if you would do those motions, please.
Yep. I would move that Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the King's Transit Authority's 2024-25 operating and capital budgets.
Councillor
second
Butler,
that.
thank you. Again, any questions? We will take those and get answers. Not seeing any questions. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed unanimously. And Councillor McKay is the alternate on that committee as well.
Do you want to present anything on that one either? No, okay.
Basically the same.
Ditto. Okay. I would move that Committee of the Whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the Valley Waste Resource Management Authority's 2024-25 operating and capital budget.
Would you like to second it? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Comments, questions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Nice loud sounds. That was also passed unanimously. And that brings us to third quarter financial update. Are you going to do that too?
I am, but it's going to be even more brief. Basically, the information's in the report. There's no motion required. It was presented at audit. I guess if anyone has questions, they can also chat with their chair, Councillor Butler of Audit. But
That's
yeah.
your answer.
I submitted my report.
Okay,
And I'm done.
you're done.
I wish I had known that. I would have came up with a really good
I know.
question.
You still can. You still can. You got, be ready for 2 weeks from now. At least you'll know though. You'll have 2 weeks to practice. All right. I'm looking for Barb. Or maybe Lindsay's going to present. Okay. Barb Shaw.
She probably thought those discussions would be a little more lengthy.
White. We can jump to committee reports. Oh, no, she's back. Welcome. Very intense. I gave mine to Caden.
Caden, that's a good idea.
He's more likely to use it than I.
Didn't he have one?
Yeah, we all go. He did not have.
Laura, do I have to hit share or anything?
Did you do the share thing?
No?
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Donovan. Through you to council, Lindsay and I are here this morning to provide you with an update. We've updated the information report that we presented previously. Council will note that there aren't motions attached to this. It's still being brought forward as an information report. Again, our intent remains the same as it was previously when we came before you. We're here to share information, to give you some updates as our information and knowledge expands. We are hoping to share that with you. The intent of today is also to give you some time between committee of the whole and then when we come back together in the council session later this month, to give you the opportunity to perhaps think about direction that you would like to give to staff, motions that you might like to make. We're not trying to rush anybody through this. We understand that this is a challenging situation and an ongoing crisis within not only Wolfville, but right across our country. So the updates as we have them. So as folks are aware, we do currently have 2 tents or ice fishing huts that are installed at the library. There is also a tent that is now located on Acadia land. And we know that there are some other folks who are sleeping rough within the community. The fire department has been informed, and they've been really supportive working with us and with Lindsay and also with some community volunteers. Whenever we hear of another person in the community, we're asking for our fire professionals to make that connection to ensure that we are doing whatever we can to make sure that folks who are unhoused are safe. We're reducing harms as much as possible. The portable toilet was installed. It took till last week. And that was because, again, due to safety concerns, the location that we came to council with was not possible. That was a code issue. So we do have an accessible unit, accessible to everybody in the community to use. And it is now located by the library property. close to where the rhododendrons are. I will note that we had it installed last week. Council directed us to have it in place for 30 days. So again, coming into our council meeting, go forward. If that is to be extended or to change, please let us know of your intent at that time. We're fine today. We're good. It's there. And we did build consensus around that. So the folks who are sheltering at that location did accept that. They thought it would be very helpful. So some additional actions that we've been taking. So our compliance staff have been doing a really good job doing wellness checks. They're doing that on a regular basis. We're doing that before storms. We're doing that after storms. We're giving ongoing reminders about Open Arms. Open Arms are the folks in our community running shelter, although not in Wolfville, but in close proximity. Safety is being monitored in accordance with our bylaws and our fire regulations. We have provided fire extinguishers to everyone living in tents. And staff are on a regular basis, Lindsay probably even more than myself, communicating with community volunteers. There are individuals in the community who are stepping up, who are acting as advocates, doing what they can to provide that additional level of care and support. We are communicating with them, being mindful of privacy, but we are also inviting people to work with us at this time. Staff are communicating with Open Arms. Of course, tents are not acceptable. Tents are not the goal. This is not a solution. The solution is transitional housing. Open Arms are now the organization who will be working through the pallet site in Kentville or North Kentville. So again, helping the folks in our community who are in crisis connect with Open Arms is how we hope to support that transition go forward. This time, it has not yet happened. We're also, as I said, sharing information with community members who want to assist. These are folks who are working with different community organizations, some through our church communities who are reaching out, wanting to know what we have done, what they might do. Our messaging is pretty consistent. Open Arms really is, they are the experts on this, and we're hoping that all folks are connecting with them. Yesterday was a really challenging day. I'm grateful that some members of council joined us. It was a very tough day going through that harm reduction session. It weighed heavily on all of us, and it was really a starting point. It's understanding the vulnerable nature of this community. It's understanding how we need to take a trauma-informed approach, and it helps us just create a better community where everyone is welcome, no matter what they have been through. So as we noted in the information report, this is really challenging, and Councillor Butler brought this question forward, and it was an excellent question. What is the town's role? And the reality is we don't have an official or legislated role. We don't. Our role is going to be what council chooses for it to be. Whether you are following the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, whether you are following moral and ethical kind of guidelines, whether we're following our strategic plan, whether you're looking to anything else, we still don't have an official legislated role. We've all agreed tents are not a solution. They are just not safe. They are not housing. We don't have a pallet community or a transitional housing site within the town of Wolfville. We don't have an emergency shelter within the town of Wolfville. Your strategic plan and your vision do indicate a desire to provide some level of support to all people, and we do this through a lens of equity. We currently don't have a budget for this work. It's not in the ops plan, and quite frankly, we're doing the best we can. It's not our area of expertise, although Lindsay, we do lean on quite heavily because of her academic resources that she brings, and we are trying to learn as quickly as we can. But again, we're jumping into this, doing the best we can, understanding our regular workloads have not gone away. That's not to say we don't want to do this work, but we are doing the best we can because we didn't think we would be doing this work. So your role go forward is whatever you determine your role to be. So in order to start to get to that point, and maybe we discuss that at council if at the council meeting if we're ready at that point, but we need to start thinking about what are we providing to the folks who have made a choice to shelter in tents in our community. There have been questions raised about power, electricity. Those responses are in the information report. At this time, it does not appear to be safe to provide power to those shelters. Do we want to provide flush toilets? A step up from the portable toilets. That again is in the information report. That would take some negotiation potentially at Railtown. Folks who are sheltering at the library have indicated that would be of interest, but we need to renegotiate a lease to make that happen. Do we want to provide potable water? Do we want to provide additional garbage collection? Do we want to provide lockers or a community pantry? These are all decision points that go beyond what staff feel that they can do at this point. We will need direction from council. We also need to know what role you would like staff to take on. Do you want us to take a more active role facilitating services, really ensuring that those folks get the services they need, bringing services to them, being that bridge? Do you want us to continue doing community coordination, helping connect folks to Open Arms and helping connect Open Arms to people and resources in the community? And do you want to seek additional supports from other levels of government? Do you want us to go back to community services? Do you want us to start more conversations with the province? Understanding that we don't know where those conversations would go. We don't know what would come back. And that is as brief as I can make it, with a bit of a lack of more time today. But Lindsay and I are here to answer your questions beyond what's in the report. Again, we don't want to rush people. We know this is challenging. This is new for all of us. We are here to support council with whatever decisions you are making so that we can all support the people who are in crisis in our community.
Councillor Palmer?
See, it's not an easy topic all the way around. Thanks, Barb, for that. My question would be, and I looked to Open Arms, having been a person who worked in Kentville and saw what they did, and they are way ahead of us on, with the experience of that. What do they want us to do?
I think their goal is the same as ours, which is understanding that tents are not a solution, but tents are a choice that people are making right now. And the people who are making that choice have every right and every ability to make that choice. So Open Arms firmly believes that the best possible path is to get folks into transitional housing. And Lindsay, I don't know if I want to speak to that a little bit. Flip on your mic.
I don't have a lot to add to that, but like Barb alluded to in the presentation, connecting with Open Arms when we do have a question, or we perhaps have had a conversation with someone who is unhoused or precariously housed and looking for support, they're kind of the first place we should go to look for to see how we can get supports to that person, rather than trying to provide those supports ourselves, and going from there, I think, is key.
So I guess what can we do to help them is really what can we do as council to assist Open Arms? Not really what they can do for us, but what can we do for them?
Well, that's what we need to be creative about. So Open Arms have come to us, and again, it goes to the level of service that the town wants to provide. We have to keep in mind that housing is the goal. Anything less than housing is not a solution, right? So whether we're looking for, those long-term solutions of creating and building more housing in the community, which everybody around the Horseshoe is committed to, but we have a crisis right now. So Open Arms, again, wants to help transition folks, either be it into Pallet. There are, I believe, 20 spaces available in Pallet to be open soon, we hope, or into some other transitional housing. So it's really helping to build those connections between the folks who are unhoused and Open Arms to help that transition. We're not housing navigators. We don't have the ability to help take that next step. So how we go about doing that probably takes a whole lot more time and a whole lot more focused effort and having a plan and sticking to it, because right now it's a whole bunch of folks in the communities who are really feeling a need to participate and help in some way, but we're all doing very different things. Open Arms has said, you know, some support services within the community might be helpful. Space for laundry, space for showers, space for, you know, providing a hot meal, private space, all of these things. So think of it almost like a drop-in type location as opposed to somewhere to sleep overnight. We currently don't have that. We don't have that within our town facilities. We've certainly discussed that. That does not exist. So we need folks from the community to either work with us, or again, that goes back to how much navigation do you want staff to do? And that doesn't necessarily have to be Lindsay and myself. It potentially can be Caden through the work that he's already doing. But we need to understand, we could do a lot of stuff, but it really is that level of service. Again, going back to not in budget, not in the ops plan. We're willing to do it, but if we are going to do it, we're going to need council's blessing.
Councillor Madeira Voss.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank Caden and Barb and the rest of the staff for organizing the harm reduction workshop that we attended yesterday. It was very powerful. It was very enlightening. And I think, you know, it certainly helped me kind of reframe perhaps some of how I ask questions or look at the support and how we determine how that support is provided and what kind of support. So I just wanted to acknowledge the staff's work in organizing that and how really very helpful it was yesterday. So thank you.
Councillor Ingham.
Yes, I believe the harms reduction that Kim Kent from Posse did the whole day was a huge eye opener for me sitting in the seat of an elected official. I learned a whole lot. So that being said, in the beginning of the presentation, you talked about the compliance staff doing some wellness checks. So Kim did talk about how many times she would visit somebody, and a lot of people have very, you know, small abrasions. Some people have lesions. And some of these, you know, go into septic and these people die. Some of them die. She talked about some people dying. And that's all because, you know, they're not comfortable going to the emergency or a doctor because they feel marginalized. So in the Halifax, the search and rescue are deployed by their REMO, right? So they go around and they're, you know, addressing wounds, et cetera, et cetera. And is there a place, and this would be working with, you know, the municipality in Kentville, because, you know, homelessness has no boundaries, right? You know, is there a place that, you know, could possibly set up that, you know, maybe even search and rescue? And Jody, this would be maybe something we could bring to REMO to say, you know, can our REMO, you know, deploy, you know, people to go out and check, and there can be a station that we go back to that's sort of set up, especially in the wintertime, because people are dying. I mean, it was pretty emotional yesterday, and what she deals with and what's going on out there, we really don't have any idea. So I guess, and then I've talked to people from Valley Search and Rescue. We don't do that around here. So that's something that maybe Jody and I can talk to Dan about, or maybe, you know, Barb, or you want to speak right now on that, or?
Before we get too far down that path, and thank you for bringing that suggestion forward, I just want to acknowledge that we have had conversation with Dan Stovall through REMO. The homelessness crisis, while it is a crisis, it's not a REMO issue. We haven't declared a state of emergency in this community. There are certain things that REMO will do, but REMO, while it's just not, that's just not the focus of REMO. If that were to change, that would take some work from elected officials. Valley Search and Rescue has been in touch. There have been some volunteers who have been working through Halifax. They did communicate with Dan Stovall. They communicated with myself and with Lindsay as well. So they are available to do wellness checks. They do require training and information. So before they can deploy, they need support. We would have to provide that support and that understanding. So again, we're not there, which is why we've been using, you know, our compliance staff to go and do those wellness checks. And wellness checks are really just making contact with the individual, reminding them, especially before storms, going and seeing folks after storms. And again, with some of our other community volunteers who are working on the ground, if a storm happens, a tent has been damaged, ensuring that another shelter is brought forward as soon as possible. And again, some of our fire officials have assisted with that as well. So Valley Search and Rescue, for thankfully our numbers are still our numbers are still unacceptable because nobody should live in those conditions. But I would say I'm confident at this time that Valley Search and Rescue have a really important role to play. I'm not sure it would be feasible to deploy them in Wolfville at this time. I feel we have that part covered.
I guess because I mean, she talked a lot about that, how the reluctance of them to go seek medical attention, right? And even one had an abscessed tooth, you know, and they're passing away from things that could have been, and it's not like, I look at Wolfville, this is an issue all over Canada, as you were saying. And so the more we can sort of pool our resources, I think it was said from West Hants all the way down to Annapolis Royal, there's identified 265 homeless, and there's probably more than that. And so I'm just saying, because it's regional, how can we work together? That's all, more, because we can't just say we have, you know, 4 or 5 people living rough here. How do we sort of work together and have those resources? Because there is no boundaries. So I don't want to just be focused on just because we only have, you know, 4 or 5 people living rough in the town of Wolfville, that we're not doing anything, working with other people. That's all.
Deputy Mayor?
Just wanted to let everybody know that there has been a group of volunteers who have been meeting to try to raise some answers and questions and toss these things around. I sort of under the umbrella of the Wolfville Area Interchurch Group, been meeting at Wolfville Baptist. I believe the church has offered a room for example, Dr. David Lapierre to meet with anybody that he needs to see as a space in town. The next meeting is next Wednesday evening, the 21st. And Michelle Parker, who runs Open Arms, is going to be coming. So that would also be a way to see what might be proactive going forward, especially in terms of lockers, community pantry, that kind of thing. But there's so many issues, and it's a very good group. I mean, Jane Skinner comes, Dr. Lapierre, Jen White, who's done wellness checks in Halifax at encampments. So it's a good group, and so you're all invited.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. So I attended the Pallet community meeting. It is actually outside my office in Kentville. Yep, right outside. So I went and learned about it, I guess, and what their process were going to be. So they are not going to be using the DCS checklist. It will be administered by Open Arms solely, which means less red tape. Which is good, I think. So my question would be, is anyone, and they are aware of the 2 individuals that are in Wolfville for sure, is anyone advocating for them to get a pallet house? I think that would be it. That is happening. I mean, snow on the ground now, but my understanding is that will be leveled really soon. They might have to plow it.
I believe
And then it's supposed to be March. That at the end of February, 1st of March, I would assume would be more March at this stage of the game, since it's the middle of February now. But there will be, 20 pallets. It will be completely fenced in. They will have services on site. Dr. Lapierre will be the physician on site there as well. It's completely, they'll have 2 people on all the time. It's gonna be, I mean, it's not ideal, obviously, it's still not a house, but it's certainly way better than what's there now. So my first question is, is there anyone, or, I mean, I don't know the individuals, but is there anyone who has a relationship with them now that will be advocating for them to get into one of those pallet houses? Because my understanding is there will be quite a shuffle of individuals from the shelters. There will be some people that are actually in the hospital right now that can't be released because they have nowhere to go. So they will be going straight from the hospital to a pallet house. there are some that are living in motels and hotels, and they're trying to sort of move those who don't want to live in isolation, but want to live part of the community, but someone who wants to live by themselves can go to the, like, so they will be doing some maneuvering of every individual to suit their needs. So my feeling was that these individuals were offered a spot that wasn't what they wanted, but a pallet house might be, because it is their own individual space and they could have it. So my question is, can someone advocate for them to get in one of those pallet houses?
I understand that is happening.
When somebody is absolutely
Yes.
doing it. Okay, that's good. That was my first question.
I don't know about everybody, but I understand one person is being,
One of the two.
one of the two.
One of the two wants to go, is what you're saying? Okay.
And there is an advocate,
Or,
whatever you call that,
Okay.
for that.
okay, great. I would like to explore the options on an ongoing basis of the lease at Waterfront Park, or Waterfront Park. I have Waterfront in my head, well, I guess it is at Waterfront.
Yeah.
In the washrooms that are there, I would like to see what that lease is. I did walk by even I didn't realize it was dawn to dusk. Because I walked by, which, dusk is now, well, now it's a little bit later, but not very late into the evening. What that would look like. I would also really like to see washrooms on the other side of town, in general, for everyone using the spaces. I wondered if the market, it was me who asked about the market space, because you could put a door right into the washrooms and close them off because they're on the outside of that building. I think that we could take on the cleaning, we could pay rent, it would be helpful to the market, and it would be helpful for us if we could explore what that partnership would look like. I would be interested in seeing what that is, as opposed to building a washroom from scratch, which we obviously at the VIC saw what those costs. So if we could partner and it would help two organizations, I think that's something worth exploring. Yeah, that's.
Through the mayor to Councillor McKay. So preliminary conversations after the questions went out at our last session. I did have a conversation with the manager at Wolfville Farmers Market. So the thought was there was quite a bit of construction and some costs and stuff. So you're looking for kind of a more detailed breakdown, and also understanding that the building is owned by Acadia. So we would need to bring them into the conversation as well.
Yep. Open the conversation. Let's see what it is. I mean, if it's some construction of a door, and obviously you'd have to close off if they were open when market staff weren't there, you'd have to have a door on the other side or a cage or something, but it is, I mean, I'm no architect or construction worker, but I wouldn't think it's not. And it's budget time, so this is the time to bring it forward. If we can get it cost at least rough, then maybe we could do that.
And looking for that location and Railtown as well to operate 24/7.
Yes. And the VIC when it opens.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Just the drop-in, you mentioned that, Barb. We don't have any facilities. So was there, I can't remember on the list of those questions now, was there someone we could partner with that could offer drop-in time, space? I'm only saying that because it's right there. The library is, I think, jam-packed with everything, so don't think there's space there. Maybe in the future, but right now, no. Is there anyone that would be willing to partner with us on that as well? We've got great partners. Maybe it's Acadia, maybe it's the market. I don't know, but somewhere where we can make those constant connections to Open Arms, because I'm also with Jen on, someone needs to look at those people from a medical standpoint. Even if you're, perhaps have a substance abuse, things can go wrong. If you're using needles, you got to be staph infections, and those are not good. So there's all kinds of things that could possibly go wrong quickly if they're not being cared for. So
through the mayor to Councillor McKay, that's starting to get into some of the questions that Lindsay and I put in the presentation about kind of coordination and facilitation. So at that point in time, because all of these centers need to be staffed and we don't have that expertise in-house. So if I'm hearing you, and just want to make sure I'm clear, So council, if that is their wish, they would be looking for staff to facilitate and coordinate the potential for services being offered in the community, understanding that part of that coordination and facilitation would require bringing in staffing. So I think that's kind of what before we're jumping in, we need to know what role you want. Obviously, having conversations on behalf of the town, but are we covering the budget? Are we securing the staff? Those are those pieces that I think have, as we've been sitting with this and kind of, it has seemed really easy to be able to jump in and why don't we just do these things? But then it's what hat are we wearing? Who are we doing this on behalf of? Is this making the situation better? All of those things. So just, I think clarity on that really, and maybe our interim CAO wants to translate that for me.
And maybe it is, then we wait and see if if the community group wants to, if they can offer something.
They
that
already
would-
have.
So they have a space.
Yes.
That is open and
Yes.
Dr. Lapierre is being there and people know about it. So I guess we don't need a drop-in space. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, there's a difference between a meetings. There's a difference between a meeting space that you would have an appointment with a doctor and a drop-in. Drop-in would have to be staffed.
Yeah.
That's not what the church has offered.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay, that's what you're saying.
But those discussions will probably happen. One of the problems has been getting a time that we could meet and have Michelle or somebody from Open Arms, because we have all these same questions. Such that people in the community are actually kind of rushing out and tripping over our feet, each other's feet a little bit. And, the library's engaged, some people have been buying things. I know Wendy and I got an email yesterday from the library because we had been providing things, and are we doing that through the town? And no, it was just personally, like who's doing what. So that coordination will begin on the 21st. But I do understand that the church has offered a room that a caregiver or a medical person or a helping person could come and meet and deal with some of those things and potentially say, let me give you a checkup, but also where are you getting food and how do we resolve that other issue? But, and I guess the library is kind of operating as a drop-in in terms of just sitting, getting warm.
And Mayor Donovan, if I may, through you to Councillor McKay, going back to what you're saying, because I'm hearing you and I'm starting to pull that apart. And I still think it does sound like there needs to be some staff role, because if a meeting happens there and we just don't know about it, and maybe it's a member of council, but maybe it's just the mayor, the deputy mayor acting in a community capacity, we just need clarity really on, we want you at this, we want you to coordinate this information, we want you to report back, we want you to find these opportunities to bring people together. If there's a budget required, we will do that. Like if we're doing that kind of facilitation, we just require that direction.
And Lindsay has participated in those meetings. One of the meetings.
As a staff person or
As a staff person. To provide information on what the town was doing.
But that's not in our ops plan. So if we
No.
want her to continue doing that, we
Absolutely.
need to tell her that she's going to keep doing that. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not-
So it's a moving
We
target.
won't be giving direction, but.
It is a moving target.
Let's be clear.
And, if alternative spaces are found and, we could, it will take some time to get this going and then we could just have everything in place and.
I just add that I took minutes at the last meeting, which I shared, and I'm willing to do that. So, you don't have to come to the meeting unless you want to.
Can you tell me the exact date and time again for that meeting, Wendy?
I believe it's 7 p.m. at the Baptist Church on the 21st. It's
Wednesday, a week from today.
Thank you.
On the, not where we were yesterday, but upstairs
Upstairs?
where we looked for the beside where we were looking for the garbage cans. Was it you? Was it-
No, it wasn't.
That was
No.
Isabel. looking for
I'll figure
garbage
it out.
cans.
Just put it in my calendar.
Counselor Palmer?
I think we're back to sort of where we started this whole thing. a month ago. Like, what do the three people, I guess, maybe now, what do they want us to do? Do we know?
I don't have, I don't think I have a specific answer. And I don't know, Lindsay, if you do, and also, I mean, I think there's a level of comfort that I would have speaking on behalf of somebody in that situation. It seems to be effective to offer things, to offer a washroom, to offer potentially a flush toilet, to offer a community pantry. Offers seem to be well received by some individuals and, you know, sometimes not by others. Fire extinguishers were received. So I think inevitably people want housing, and they want safe housing, and they want privacy, and they don't want to have to be on display. But we don't have housing to give people. The town does not have housing to give people, but that's what people want. So then it's, what do we provide up until that point? So the key considerations and discussions, and Lindsay and I received a report this morning we can share with council from the Human Rights Commission. So we're looking at things like there are some keys at washroom facilities, sanitation, water, power. Those are things that are considered essentials. If those are going to be provided, we need to have a plan for that. And the current location might not work. Until we know what council would like to provide and what level of service, we don't know an appropriate location. Like that's that strange spot we're in where we don't want to keep coming back. It's like, we all want to do so much, but we just need lots more discussion. And again, you're absolutely right, Councillor Palmer, to say, what do people want? The only way to know is to ask them and to actually involve them in conversation, which to the most part, I believe that Open Arms is doing an effective job with.
Barb, one group that really is responsible for housing that we're not talking about, and that is the province. Is there anybody, and I don't expect to have the answer, but is there like a housing person for our area that is supposed to be giving guidance? Or it strikes me that it strikes me that we are all trying to work in an area that we don't have responsibility for. What we as staff, council, and members of the community, and the person that I would kind of be expecting to be there taking leadership, I'm not seeing. And I have spoken to our local MLA who suggested I talk to John Lohr, but is there, you know, without going to the elected officials, is there a staff position responsible for housing in our area, or does that not exist?
I don't have an exact answer for you, but that is certainly something we're trying to understand. From this report that came out yesterday as well, it was also on the national last night. If you watch, you may have seen. Yeah, and it talks a lot about the lack of coordination that's really needed between all levels of government, and municipalities are kind of on the front lines of the housing and homelessness crisis, but it's not directly our role to help solve that. So we need to really work together on that, and how that unfolds in the years to come, I would guess, is to be seen. But we'll bring some information back on who might be responsible provincially. We have had discussions with Department of Community Services. So that's one piece, particular to the homelessness aspect, but also to affordable and precariously housed folks as well. So they're all pieces that are being worked on in the background. Yeah.
It just strikes me that's such a key individual or group, and you know, we have people in the town who work for housing, but again, it's not their role. I'm just shocked that we don't have a person who says this is who's doing what, because it's really hard for volunteers. quite aside from us, we at least have some resources, but volunteers are no more responsible for this than we are, and they have less resources to pull together, so. It's a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, just as an observation, well, it's been helpful to hear the discussion this morning in terms of, there seems to be a bit of a consensus as to having some exploratory assessment of the market and making modifications, and that gives staff some information in terms of going forward to do some cost analysis there. Perhaps in the fullness of time, council be more prepared to make a determination as to the level of staff's involvement, but bearing in mind that dependent upon the anticipated level of staff's involvement, it'll have implications relative to resources. And so, and as council has denoted, we're trying to have this discussion to help to inform our budget in the upcoming year. And again, this is not to accelerate the discussion, it's just to alert council that just as council is musing as to what some of the physical alterations might need to take place in order to make these accommodations, should council have a consensus position that they would like to see staff do more at some juncture, we need to look and try to do some type of analysis in terms of what that effort looks like and how we resource it. So I just mentioned it to you. It's not to accelerate the discussion, but it is to allow council some time to reflect on this so that should council view our involvement to be either sustained over a period of time or what have you. But again, it'll be dependent, but I just wanted to mention that. I know it's an obvious comment, but it'll certainly help to inform us in terms of how we can turn our mind to following the wishes of council in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKay?
So this isn't going to be a short-term solution, obviously. So at this point in time, and I'll look to everyone because I'm not sure where we land, but I may just, I don't know if they're good ones for everybody or not, but the washrooms at Railtown and at the market, I would see those being long-term solutions for everyone all the time, forever, plus one day. Like that's just not here, just forever. So if it was a capital investment, it would be great. And if it was a change in lease, great. What does that mean? I'm happy that the library is being the drop-in, and I'm happy to hear the church has a space. And if we keep, I guess if Hayden is doing the wellness checks and letting those individuals know those options are there and that we're going to work on that. And I would be open to saying, because this isn't going to happen by the time council comes and we've only put 30 days of the porta potty there. I would say we extend it to 60 and hopefully have some more information to move forward either with, probably the change of lease might be faster than fixing the market. But if we can do those things in the interim, I think that gets us to a point where at least we're offering some services, even though it's maybe not everything needed, obviously, but at least it's something, if that was agreeable to the group, and certainly have more discussion as we go on, as the CEO said, but at this just as a stopgap, to start staff thinking in some kind of direction, give you something to actually focus on and give us some information back.
Councillor Ingham?
Yeah, I mean, we had an extensive discussion on the porta potties, but I would recommend that we keep it there till the end of the winter time, then not just the 60 days. So maybe April, but Councillor McKay asked, could we extend the porta potty there till 60 days? But I'm requesting maybe that we keep it there a little bit longer.
I'm just saying 60, because if we could get running water at Waterfront or at
I get you.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But, so
Yeah.
I
see what you're
guess
saying.
we could say leave it there until we get at least change at Railtown.
Yeah,
If that's possible. If it's not
yeah.
possible, come back and
Yeah,
tell
that
us.
makes more sense. Yeah.
Just to add that there is running water because the folks at the oven use it at the Roby Tufts Pagoda. So no, it's just water.
Yeah. I'm thinking have a face wash.
Yes.
Through Mayor Donovan to the deputy mayor, don't believe that that is available at this time of year.
Yes.
Shut down for the winter.
Yeah.
Does that give staff enough it appeared that, it appeared that Councillor McKay's suggestion was a good one. At least would give us time to get our ducks in a row a little bit more than they are.
Absolutely. That's very helpful. And is there anything and asking through the mayor to council, if there are additional things that we have not covered, again, if you would forward those through our CAO. We understand this is a very unusual situation. If you can continue to share that information, it can come back to us. If there are things that we can work on, we will. If there are barriers or if we're uncomfortable with what we're supposed to be doing through the CAO, we will let you know. And again, as questions come forward, we're happy to flow that information, and we will forward that report this afternoon to all members, so you can watch for that.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask a question.
Certainly true.
Garbage, did we say, because that was one of the questions. So we are picking up the garbage on a more regular basis, or are we doing that? Because I think that's beneficial for everyone in the town if that does occur. I don't know what that means. That maybe means more staff time too. I'm not sure, but. Was that a question? Was that on the list or did I make
Yes.
that up?
Yeah, no.
Garbage through Mayor Donovan to Councillor McKay. There is in a number of encampments, that is a recommendation that is made to ensure that garbage is collected on a regular basis. At this time, we don't have reason to believe that we need to provide additional, but if that site were to grow, if we were to move folks to a different site, that would be a consideration. We currently do have those regular town receptacles there that are available at this time. Yeah.
All right, thank you. More to come, obviously. All right, committee reports, external, Councillor Butler, anything additional to add on your King's Point to Point?
As submitted.
Thank you. Any questions of Councillor Butler? Councillor Ingham, Diversity Kings report.
Yes, it is African Heritage Month, the whole month of February. There is an event going on, I think it's on the 22nd at Al Whittle, Shoulder to Shoulder is playing there with some guests. If anybody wants to check that out. It's the only thing I can think of. A few things were canceled because of the weather at the beginning of February. So I don't know when that got rescheduled to. And there is, I think Barb did update some things on the website too at Acadia. There's a few things Marjorie Lewis is doing. And I believe one of them's today and then another one is at the end of the month. So if you want to check out the Facebook page, there are some events that Barb shared. So thank you.
Okay. I have nothing else to add on the IMSA. Next Tuesday, I'm hoping that we will get the, next Wednesday, 21st. I'm hoping we will get the draft of the WSP phase 1 study for KTA. I don't know for a fact. I'm hoping we might get it in advance, but that will be certainly interesting and inform of future routes and all those other things that will be really keen to see. So that brings us, if anybody has any questions of me, otherwise that's my report. Councillor Palmer.
Is there anything new to report with the fire departments or anything?
I have not heard anything.
Through the chair, there's a meeting tomorrow afternoon with the committee and actually going to be meeting at 3 p.m. tomorrow with the stakeholders and hopefully have a further update after that. Thank you for the prompt.
Good. Good. All right. That brings us to public input. Did you wish to make a second public input? No? Okay. Although your agenda says we have an in camera, we do not. So I will call for a motion to adjourn, but remember, we're just going to stay for 5 minutes. It's not in camera. Just a minute. Councillor Ingham is going to give us an update and has a question for council. So if council could stay.